Recording in progress.
Bayang magiliw, pelas ang sinanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupit, di ka pasisingin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Omo namong nama, oni koning bebiyanga mo, no tipo-tipo mikloni, kwanga hamo, tina hamo, kodayit king mo inang namo kloni, dayit kibalo namo, oleto padomo namo, bogobi namo kloni, pinaagi ning dait no Kristo Jesus. Amen.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day that you have blessed us to come and gather. May each and every individual present be enlightened with your grace as we seek and uncover your divine purpose for all of our events activities. May your light find its way into the lives of every individual who has made this day possible. Lord God, it is our earnest prayer that your will be done throughout this event. Guide our intentions to align with your holy will. May all our efforts become a blessing to the rest of the community that we will be serving and bring glory to your name. Guide us to become leaders who are blanketed with love, service, and hope for the world that we will be serving. All these we ask, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you again for joining this webinar this afternoon. The webinar is entitled Safe Bites, Navigating the World of Food Safety. Before we begin, we'd like to ask the participants to be reminded of the following. Please, next slide, Ika. So again, for all the participants, again, thank you for joining us. But we'd like to also remind you to change your Zoom name into this format. The name of your institution, then an underscore, and then your full name or your nickname and your last name. Our second reminder is that you make sure that you mute your microphones if it's not in use. So later we will have an open forum, so we will ask you to ask questions. But for the meantime, to respect also our speakers and reactors, may we just ask you to mute your microphones until you're asked to speak. And lastly, feel free to use the chat box if you have any questions or comments and this question, and even during the presentations that will be made. So all of these questions will be compiled and also will be sent to me during the open forum of this presentation. Before we start, so I'd like to also note that we have more than 70 participants now in the Zoom room. So again, thank you for supporting our webinar this afternoon. And again, also thank you to all the speakers, no, and also the actors, no, who have agreed to present during this afternoon's webinar. So the next slide, just and to provide you some background, no, of this webinar. Over the past 4 years, no, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Philippines Working Group on the Sustainable Development Goal 2, composed of the Ateneo de Manila University, Ateneo de Davao, Xavier University, Ateneo de Cagayan, and Xavier Science Foundation, which has organized over 2 dozen webinars on various facets of food security and nutrition and related issues. We started our first webinar in April 2021 when we organized the first independent dialogue in the Philippines, which was also a run-up to the UN Food System Summit in that year. In 2022, we organized several webinars along the lines of the various action tracks of the Food System Summit. And then last year, we organized a series of webinars around the theme, no, of looking at policy issues related to food security and nutrition. And the first webinar actually that we've held this year, focusing on various aspects, of food sustainability, was held on the topic Nourish the Nation, Advocacies on Nutrition. This afternoon's webinar, entitled, which focuses on understanding food safety, was selected as the topic of this year's focus, because of the issue of the prevailing many issues related to food safety. If it's not safe, it is not food. So the objective of this webinar is for students, academics, and partner institutions of the SDSN Philippines, and also different academic institutions and civil society organizations, and also government agencies, including local government units, all of you who are here, is to understand better the dimension of food safety and to be aware of its importance for individuals, consumer organizations, and institutions. As we know, globally, there's around 600 million people which get sick from more than 200 illnesses that can be transmitted by food. Foodborne illnesses also contribute to 42,000 preventable deaths around the world each year. So hopefully this webinar will be at the contribution of SDSN Philippines to the topic of Food Safety Day, which is observed on June 7 of each year and spearheaded both by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization and World Health Organization, whose joint efforts over the years have maintained the global standards for food safety and security through the Codex Alimentarius, the global standard keeper for food and food safety. So consumer education is most important in order to reduce the risks associated with food-borne diseases. So we have a very interesting round of speakers, but let me introduce first myself. I'm Philip Tuanyo, or Randy. I'm the current dean of the Ateneo School of Government at the Ateneo de Manila University and one of the conveners of the working group on food sustainability. To introduce our speakers this afternoon, we have a very interesting set of speakers that will discuss the issue of food safety. And let me introduce them one by one before they actually speak. First, we will have the next slide, please. Dr. Lionel Dabadi, who is currently the United Nations Food and Agriculture Representative in the Philippines. He will provide an overview of global food safety and the work of the FAO in collaborating on the Codex Alimentarius, and can also speak on the theme of the 2024 World Food Safety Day. He has over 25 years of experience in aquaculture development, water quality and pond management, value chain, quality, and food safety standards. He is a doctoral graduate of the University of Paris and an agronomist engineer of Montpellier Supagro. Dr. Dabadi has worked as a scientist for the French Agricultural Research Center, or CIRAD, partnering with local institutions in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Our second speaker is Dr. Kenneth Hartigango, currently a core faculty member of the Ateneo School of Government and Senior Research Fellow of the Ateneo Policy Center of the School of Government. He is also a former Undersecretary of Health and will speak on relevant issues related to food safety, having worked with the Food and Drug Administration as Undersecretary and Director General. Dr. Hartigan Go earned his medical degree from the University of the Philippines College of Medicine and holds a degree in clinical pharmacology from the Newcastle University in the United Kingdom. Our third speaker is Dr. Romeo Romy Quijano, a toxologist and chairperson of the Pesticide Action Network in Asia Pacific. He is a retired professor of the University of the Philippines College of Medicine and is an internationally recognized expert on chemical safety and health, and his contributions have been noted by various global and domestic institutions. So without further ado, I'd like to ask our first speaker, Dr. Labadi, to make his presentation. Lionel, Dr. Labadi, thank you again.
Thank you. I just for me to share my screen, I need for you to stop sharing the slide.
Ikap, can you just yeah, thank you, Ikap. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Randy. Magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Thank you for inviting me to present this role and contribution of FAO to food safety. So very quickly, you know that FAO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. We were created at the end of the World War II in 1945. Whenever I want to tease my other colleagues from UN agencies, I'm explaining them that we are older than the UN because FAO was created actually 1 week before the United Nations was signed. But of course, we are part of this international effort that started just at the end of the war with the objective to make sure that we don't go anymore into the kind of drama that we had been going at the time of the World War II. At the time, the objective was to achieve food security for all because there was a lot of famine because of the war, including in Europe and many parts of the world, but also to make sure that people have regular access to enough high quality food to lead active and healthy healthy lives. So this is in that dimension of high quality that FAO has moved to work into food safety. Very quickly, just to give you the idea, FAO, just like the United Nations, you know, we are not here to tell the countries what to do. We are here to gather the countries and reach a consensus. And based on this consensus, then we share with the countries, with our member state, what we are doing. So our principles is first to avoid having a narrow visions or lens vision, but we have an agri-food system approach, meaning that we try to approach all issues related to food and food safety within their holistic dimensions and not just focusing on one element of the only. The second dimension is that we have people at the center. We are here to serve the farmers, the fishers, but also the consumers. The third area is through strategic partnerships. We are not working on our own. We are working with partners. We are working with the academy. We are working with the Department of Agriculture. And the last element is the inclusiveness, leaving no one behind. But of course, being the United Nations, we are working on building consensus. We cannot work without reaching a consensus. So for reaching consensus, we try to be as inclusive as possible. In FAO, one country is one vote, meaning that when we are trying to discuss topics related to food and agriculture, the voice of the Philippines is equivalent to the voice of the United States of America, China, France, or the Solomon Island. One country is one vote. Also, part of building the consensus is by trying to be transparent and sharing knowledge, sharing database, and also for building consensus, try to build capacity because sometimes, you know, it is really essential for the people to be able to negotiate and defend the views of their countries, to have access to all the capacity that are needed for this. Our strategy is summarized around what we call the 4 betters: the better nutrition, better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better lives. The idea is not to replace the 2030 agenda, you know, the SDGs, but try to explain how we are going to implement the 2030 agenda what is our pathway for implementing the 2030 agenda. So these four betters, for better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life, they aim at highlighting the interconnectedness of the economy, of the social dimension, and the environment in the agri-food systems, and to make sure how we can boost the productivity, produce more food, but also by minimizing our environmental impact and maximizing our social sustainability. So around these four betters, we have 20 priority, and food safety appears along the several of them. So let me just, if I can find a pointer. Yes, the pointer. You can see that in the better production, the food safety appears under the dimensions of One Health, and the better nutrition about safe food for everyone and transparent market and trade. These are the three dimensions for the food safety in the strategic framework of FAO 2022-2031. More specifically, so what are the strategic priority for food safety within the FAO strategic framework? So we have four strategic outcome. The first one, I would say, is the international dimension, you know, of FAO. So it's the intergovernmental and the intersectoral coordination of the global food safety governments reinforced at all levels. The second one is about the scientific dimensions of food safety. The sound scientific advice and evidence are provided as the foundation for food safety decision making. The third dimension is about the food control system at the national level. So the national food control system are further strengthened and are continuously improved. And finally is the leaving no one behind. So involve everybody, all stakeholders, both public and private stakeholders, to ensure food safety management throughout the agri-food systems. So let me go back to each of these four strategic outcomes and give you some further explanation as well as some example. So for the first one, regarding the intergovernmental and intersectoral coordinations, it was already mentioned the Codex Alimentarius. You know, the Codex Alimentarius is our joint body with the World Health Organizations, which provides all the food safety standards. But more recently, we are also working on the One Health approach. Particularly, you remember the challenge that we have been facing after the COVID. You know, there were many questions about the origin of COVID, how it was related to food. There were some suspicions that maybe the consumption of some wildlife meat could be responsible for the pandemic. So we are also highly engaged into the One Health approach. And we are also working on fostering the communications on food safety and risk to avoid the spreading of false informations and support a better understanding of food safety and risk. So the Codex Alimentarius, it was founded by FAO and the World Health Organization on 1963, and in fact, it is the Bible when it comes to international food standards. This is whenever you have any kind of standards or information that you need with regards to the food safety. This is the main reference. The main reason why it serves as the international food standard, it is because it is based on sound science provided by independent international risk assessment bodies and also ad hoc consultation with international experts. And while it is the Codex standards is served as a voluntary application, no country is obliged to follow the standards of the Codex Alimentarius. Most of the time, it is a basis in the national legislation. And one of the reasons for this is that the Codex Alimentarius also is aiming at helping the countries removing the barriers to trade. For example, whereas no country is forced to implement any recommendations or any standards drawn by Codex Alimentarius, if some countries and particularly the World Trade Organization members, want to apply more safety measures that are more strict than those set by the Codex, they may be required to justify scientifically why they impose these measures, because the idea is that food safety should not be a barrier to trade. The other dimension is One Health, which I mentioned. So we know that the way we interact with the animals, with the plants, with the environment, but also with each other, the human behavior is responsible for the spreading of some disease and some health issues. So the idea is that these interactions between the food, the environment, the people, the plants, the animals is particularly relevant for the food safety, because the microorganism can be easily transferred from one area, from one food to another, and from one person to another. So definitely that's why FAO is embracing the concept of One Health. This is a concept that we implement a lot, of course, when it comes to animal health management and animal disease, but also in a more generic approach through the holistic dimensions of food safety, by really trying to understand how we can minimize the food safety issues by having a holistic approach. The second dimension is about the scientific advices. So that's where we come to the science, the evidence, the experts. And part of this element is first to understand and appreciate the importance of the scientific advice on food safety, but also to identify emerging issues. One other dimension on this element is also the food safety database. You know, in particular, one of the database that FAO is maintaining is the FAO genetically modified food platform. You know that genetically modified food is an area on which there is no consensus. Some countries don't want to authorize genetically modified food, or other countries are allowing. So FAO has not been able to reach a consensus on this issue, but is maintaining a platform which gives general information about this element. In addition to this, FAO is maintaining a series of expert committees on different areas which have been created over the years. So the oldest one is the one on food additives, contaminant, and residues of veterinary drugs in food, which was created in 1956. This is the JECFA. But we are also maintaining many more joint expert committees, like the one on microbiological hazard, which was created in 2000, the one on maximum residual limits in food, which was established in 1963, the one on pesticide specifications, which was created in 2002, the one on pesticides regulation, management, and use, created in 2007, and most recently in 2010, the one on nutrition. So this really, FAO is really working together with the WHO on maintaining and updating the scientific knowledge on food safety together with WHO. The third element, which is more about the kind of work that we are doing at the country level, is about the national food control systems. So we are not just providing, you know, international guidance and international knowledge, but we are also working with the countries to evaluate and strengthen the national food control systems. We are also very active in supporting the countries to participate more actively in Codex Alimentarius. This is not something very particularly relevant for the Philippines, because Philippines has always been very active in the Codex Alimentarius and has been very participating in many areas. But for some countries, you know, particularly the poor country, it may be difficult to have a voice in the discussions and relating to food safety. So we are really trying to build the capacity of the countries to be able to participate actively in the Codex Alimentarius. We are also helping some countries developing and updating their own food safety standards. We are helping FAO members to generate relevant food safety data, and we are also supporting our countries to embrace relevant technological development, particularly the innovations and the digital technologies. You know, we are facing a lot of new technologies. Many of them are relevant for food safety, and we are trying to help also the countries to implement. So just a few examples. We have a tool that is the food control assessment tool, which helps the countries and the national authorities to assess their own food control system and see how harmonized, objective, and consensual they are. We have also a huge database of legislative information related to food and agriculture to help the countries improve their own governance, their own regulations, and their own regulatory controls. So just to give you an example, since 1995, when it was created, we have approximately 8,000 new entries of regulations every year. FAO is also working a lot to help the governments to have a coherent approach to food fraud. And from this point of view, we are really trying to help the countries identify the possible regulatory approach to counter the food fraud. Another area, so I was mentioning about innovations and digital solutions. So for example, this is a work that we are doing in Ghana. We have been working with the Veterinary Service Directorate of Ghana and also the Food and Drug Authority of Ghana to try to see what kind of digital solutions can allow the remote inspection of food business and dispense online training on this. This is something that emerged during the COVID. You know, during the COVID, it was very important to minimize the contamination of disease, and so making solutions to enable the remote inspections of the food business was very, very important for the country, and we have supported with digital solution on this. We are also providing training. For example, right now we are providing technical training to Azerbaijan, the Republic of Moldova, and Turkey on food safety. And we are also maintaining and supporting networks, global information and prevention network, such as the InfoSan. For example, in Thailand, we have been working with the government on the livestock sector, trying to make sure that we can at the same time improve the provision of quality food safe meat for both the domestic and the export market, but also make sure that the Thai livestock sector is aligned to both the international and national standards. With regards to the fourth area, which is working with the public and the private stakeholders to ensure the food safety, we are making sure that we try to have inclusive and gender responsive programs to prevent food issues, food disease issues, and control food safety and manage the food safeties. We are also providing stakeholders with tools and resources to make informed choice. You know that, of course, people are very much concerned about the safety of their foods, and many fake informations are circulating. So definitely, FAO is providing informations to help the consumers make informed choice. We can also make sure that we can inform not just at the national level, but also make sure that at the global level, the work that is being done in the countries is escalated to make sure that other countries benefit from this information. And finally, we can also have some training programs and curriculum that reflect the complexity of the food safety, and we promote this holistic approach. So some example of what we are doing on this area: we have been working with many national authorities and food producers on the management of the mycotoxins. You know, the mycotoxin is a major issue with regards to food safety, particularly in cereals, and we are really providing some tools, online tools on on controlling the mycotoxins. We are also working a lot on antimicrobial. You know, antimicrobial is about making sure that we can at the same time control the disease today, but avoid that in the future we don't have any problems, you know, where the main risk with the unresponsible use of antimicrobials is that in the future we will not be able to treat some of the disease. So together with WHO, we have recently developed a One Health approach on the management of the foodborne antimicrobial resistant bacteria and making sure we can monitor this antimicrobial resistant bacteria in the food chain and minimize the consequences for the human health. We have also been working on the Ciguatera fish poisoning, and particularly we have been supporting fishers, fish farmers, fish handlers and processors to make sure that we can stop the toxin and avoid that the contaminated fish product being raw tilapia. And so FAO has been producing a risk profile and identifying aquaculture practices to help the producers and the fish farmers make sure that we can minimize the danger pending further research to control the disease. Another area, this is the new food. Seaweed is not really a new food for the Philippines, but in many countries it is a new food. You know, the consumption is increasing very fast over the world, and with the seaweed consumption, just like with any other new food, there are new disease and new risks that are emerging, and so we are working on this. And FAO, for example, in the case of seaweeds, FAO has been at the forefront to identify and analyze hazards and develop guidance of how to consume the seaweeds in a safe manner. So what is the way forward when it comes to food safety at FAO? First of all, I think it's the foresight, the FAO foresight. It's a program that FAO is implementing that is trying to work with policymakers and with the private sectors to identify what are the risks that may emerge over the medium to long term. So the idea is really to identify risk and make scenario building to try to find how we can best handle those new challenges in the future. Of course, we are working on new foods. So I just mentioned about the seaweeds, but we have many more new foods, you know, that are emerging. And one area in which FAO has been working quite a lot is about the insects, particularly the edible insects, which is also a new area emerging as foods, but that comes with new risk. One big area is the climate change. You know that climate change is a reality. It is already impacting the productions in terms of volume, because we have a lot of of impact in terms of destruction, in terms of changes in the patterns in the crops that can be produced. But it's also creating new challenge in terms of food safety, whether because we are going to have new toxins that may emerge, new mycotoxins, new marine toxins, or also some new disease that will be reaching new areas. As you know, some disease that used to be in some countries now are reaching other countries. And definitely the climate change is also a major concern when it comes to food safety. So we are also trying to work on this and try to better understand what are the changes at stake and how we can tackle them. But for sure, food safety is always a matter of collaboration, partnership, and knowledge sharing. It's really something very important. And what FAO is really doing is working with all stakeholders, with all the countries, with all the UN agencies, with all the academia and research centers, and with the private sector to really make sure that every time we have the latest informations as fast as possible, and we can implement and share them in the most efficient way. So one of the elements about this communication is the World Food Safety Days, which was last week. You know, it's on the 7th of June, which in 2018 was declared by the UN General Assembly as the World Food Safety Day. So this is a very brief presentation of what we are doing currently in terms of food safety. But I will be happy to answer any questions you may have more specific. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lionel, also for this very comprehensive review and also for keeping within the time now for 20-25 minutes. So thanks a lot and a very clear exposition of what the FAO has been doing. Next, we will have the presentation by Dr. Kenneth Artigando. Go, Doc Ken.
Dean Randy, thank you very much. I'm going to present my slides, if I may, and thank you for inviting me for this activity. Give me a moment, please. Okay, my talk will be focused on food safety, and because I'm a toxicologist, I'll bring in a few cases, short cases of food safety issues so that you could understand and describe that we do have some regulatory gaps, and this is a big challenge for all of us. No? Moving along, okay, I've always thought that food security and food safety, although they are two different terminology, are in fact related to each other. There's a fine line between the two. And I like to mention that looking at development problems of the 21st century around the world, food insecurity is one of the first in the item, no? And with that, if there's a decreased access, there would be issues with the quality of food, and with the quality of food, there might be some issues with safety risks. Would likewise increase just because there's food insecurity. So that means safety will be an outcome, no, of bad insecure food access. But earlier, FAO, our speaker, has mentioned climate change, so I won't belabor the point. But violence and conflict will be a end result, no, where people have access to food, not have access to food and the like. Now, I take you back years ago when there was a melamine scandal, and this is really a contaminated food, no, in milk. And this led to a global concern because now people are paying more attention to what is being added, no, to nutritious substances, and this was targeted in to children, and it wasn't an issue isolated in China. It was brought out, no, exported to other parts of the world. Lessons that we can learn from this short story was early intelligence sharing across the nation is rather important. I thought our Department of Foreign Affairs were not doing their job at the time in monitoring the news, no, that's happening in China. So I think our regulators and inspectors should have a global perspective and be collaborate with the media, no, to be able to surface these kind of small things that are happening already elsewhere. The Philippines has a Food Safety Act, and this was enacted in 2013 with implementing rules and regulation that only came out 2 years later, 2015. Boy, it was so difficult to bring the Department of Agriculture and Department of Health together. But the whole purpose of this is to protect the food that the consumers in the Philippines have access to, so that they are not harmed, no. And the traceability from farm to fork principle goes across processing, production, transport, storage, all the way down to retail sales and consumption. And therefore, there are biological, that's microorganism, physical, and then chemical, no? And this includes additives, and the Codex Alimentarius actually spell for what is acceptable and not. I'd like to share with you that in the Asian region, ASEAN region, we do have a rapid alert system for food and feed. No? So when one regulatory agency is able to detect what's wrong in the food system in one country, whether it is available in the other countries or not, we put it in an alert system so the other 9 member countries will be able to benefit from early warning. And early warning means that they could put a stop to importation and see if they have a similar issue and prevent harm to the citizens. This is one great regional collaboration. I just don't know how this is working as of the moment, but during 10 years ago, we know that this existed. Let me share with you another example. In the Philippines, we are it's a popular breakfast meal, no, tocino. But this is a real case that we have seen where tocino was fed to a young boy. We really don't know how much was given to the boy, but the boy turned blue. And one of the things that we know about tocino is that it contains sodium nitrate or salitre to cure the meat, and it imparts a reddish color. Now, well, in theory, if you put just enough, it will be safe. maybe putting too much and giving to a large volume of the food to a young person who may not be able to tolerate it will develop a clinical manifestation called methemoglobinemia. And why is this harmful? Because the hemoglobin, the red cell, would not be able to carry oxygen to other parts of the body, and therefore their skin color becomes blue. And this could be a life-threatening. Now, in the context of the Philippines, do we then regulate this? And many of these are small mom and pop micro enterprise that is selling this kind of food stuff, and the regulatory agencies is not able to police no all over the country the local production of this nitrate. So I think this is something to be considered. We should keep this in mind. No, the next one is a study we did in the Food and Drug Administration way back in 2013, where we got a tip from a New York laboratory asking us, please check your public market and look for colorful food. Bagoong, salitre, bagoong, kasukba, which is like local saffron, the very colorful gulaman, red and green. And boy, we found out that it contained adulterants like industrial dye, Sudan red, methanol yellow, orange 2, Rodman B, no? And there's a long story behind our tracing. We found public market in Metro Manila and Metro Cebu actually have this kind of chemicals in the food. So the more colorful it is, the more dangerous we think it is. No, we have been monitoring that in the past. I just don't know whether the government is interested to continue the surveillance of this. No, we managed to put out two early warnings to local government, and sadly, we're not sure if they took this into serious consideration because when this news came out, no, it was timed unfortunately with the Typhoon Haiyan or the Typhoon Yolanda issue, and nobody really paid attention to this food stuff. No, but just the same, nobody is going to feel any symptoms when they eat it in small amounts. But over time, as you know, these industrial dye are not food grade chemicals, may create mutagenicity effect. No? We earlier I know that there was a story about cigoteria, but let me share with you what we also know about biologic poisoning, where dinoflagellate or algae is bioaccumulated in mga tahong, shellfish, and creating different kinds of red tide poisoning. Now we've seen in the Philippines diarrheic and neurotoxic and paralytic shellfish poisoning, and this could actually be dangerous. People can die, because of that. And please remember that these chemicals will not be destroyed by cooking. But again, this implication here is that the fisher folks will have loss of income. But at that time, when we first detected this mga 20 years ago, and we were telling the Bureau of Fishery and Aquatic, do your job in constantly monitoring coastal water. And if you find high traces of dinoflagellate or red tide, please announce it so that the fisher folks will know not to sell it, and consumers will avoid not to buy it for the meantime, because if you get sick, and this would actually kill you. No, but we're glad that the system has been set up. If you've been reading the newspaper, you'll know that now the Department of Agriculture, BFAR, is now reporting coastal monitoring of red tide. We also thought that this is an important thing to share with the seamen. We a lot of Filipino goes out of the country to be seaman, working in cargo ship, cruise ships, and the like. No, and sadly, they have no orientation about the food safety when they go out to other country. This is an example where we had 9 Filipino seamen, somewhere in the Caribbean, where they were told, no, by their elder Filipino seamen not to eat barracuda, but they caught it, they ate it, and then 9 of them suffered a very interesting phenomenon called heat cold reversal. No? So we touch something cold, they will feel hot. They touch something hot, it is super cold, no, in their hands. And this is an occupational hazard, which I thought our Filipino labor regulators, migrant worker, DOLE, POEA, OWA, should inform, no, and train our overseas worker what to be careful in terms of food safety. I think this is a missing link in their orientation. We know that over time fish do accumulate metals, and these are areas that are published in the public domain, where lead, mercury have been found, no, even in Manila Bay farms, Honda Bay, Palawan, Laguna Bay, that, no, And what it means that we need to intensive monitoring of this kind of water in order to advise consumers as well as sellers on the level of metal. Metal over time is going to affect humans, no? Oh, you'd be surprised that even people do eat foods, no, yung palaka. But this is a special kind of palaka, which is a buffalo frog, no, that carries toxin. And we have cases wherein they caught it, they remove the skin, and then they ate it, they cook it and ate it with alcohol, and something very bad happened to them in their heart. And we have issued out warnings that this kind of frogs or toads rather should not be consumed because it is too dangerous. This is another interesting story I want to share with you. In Bohol in the year 2005, 27 children were found dead, no, after eating cassava cake. And this is the importance that don't jump into conclusion that because it was cassava, it contained cyanide, no, cyanogenic compounds. And when we look at the symptoms of these 100 people who were hospitalized, we later found out that it did not. It is not.
Pag wala pang 48 hours, mare-retrieve mo pa. 6 months, mayroon kasi. But 48 hours, ako si Jerry, lagi kong binablock pag nagagalit ako. Pero kailan bago
Thank
We
you
found
again.
out that this was in fact not cyanide, but this was cassava powder was placed in a container which previously contained pesticides. And the symptoms of that were seen by clinical toxicologists to say, no, it's more compatible with pesticide poisoning. So a different antidote was given and to save the other children. Unfortunately, 27 children have died. This is in fact turned into a movie, no? So that to warn people about eating poorly prepared food. No, in this one it was contamination. We have seen as well in food safety two different crime stories where the house help prepared milk for the infant and intentionally placed pesticide powder. And in another case which we handled, a family of four were given hamburger by their house help, and she ran away after that, no, and they were poisoned with pesticide, no. So I think we also have in food safety we need to keep an eye on cases that goes to the emergency room and see if these were intentional or accidental. In this case, even intentional poisoning does happen. We have seen many cases of foreigners being duped where they are doped with when they were giving coffee or drinks. And this is part of a robbery deal, no? When benzodiazepine, a prescription drug, is laced into their drinks and they become sedated, hypnotized, and they have amnesic effect. They don't remember what happened to them, and their personal valuables are stolen. No, so this is something worrisome because I think we need to teach people to be conscious not to accept food from strangers. We saw bacterial contamination, no, of durian candies in certain parts of Mindanao. And later on, we found out that apparently these durian candies were produced in a factory that did not have quality assurance, wasn't registered. They were delivered to other provinces, and none were found in Davao. But these other provinces were, it's very strange. The kids were given free candy as if they were sampling it, giving it for free. And later we found out that it contained staphylococcal bacteria, which means that there was no quality assurance, and we're not really sure. We suspect this might have been intentional poisoning of three provinces outside of Davao. Part of the work of regulators is to monitor products like peanut butter. As you know, peanut butter comes with it. Peanut at some point in time may be contaminated with aflatoxin, and this is tasteless, and this is heat labile, no. It can be destroyed by heat. But if we eat it, we might have liver injury later on, no. So question now is how do we hold industry accountable, and that it means that they need to be monitoring their product occasionally for quality assurance. So the quality assurance that we're referring to is a system called HACCP, no. Um, we call it hazard analysis critical control point, which is like the good manufacturing practice implemented in pharmaceutical manufacturing. But companies that we are looking for and regulators have a role to play is making sure that they are complying with some of the protocols for HACCP. In the other countries abroad, we learn from United States that because they have a lot of importation of food outside of the United States, they are in fact posting their regulators and inspectors in those countries that are manufacturing their food at the point of production, no? Before they're imported into their borders. This is one way of making food and drug system regulatory system more strong. This is something that we're not doing, but I think we need to learn, particularly since we have this ASEAN food safety notification system. So in my last slide, I like to share with you that there are regulatory challenges from the government in dealing with food safety. I think food safety is a business for everybody. Everybody should be accountable and responsible for it. Poisoning can happen because of natural toxin, bacterial contamination, fungal contamination, including chemical, either intentional or unintentional. They may come from natural environment like metals, but also food can be unsafe because people have intentionally placed a pharmaceutical to harm people, and therefore, one of the gaps that we see is registered food with supplements. No, they are selling it like a nutraceutical. Are sometimes illegally marketed as cure-all, and this is amplified and sadly by social media, making our people scammed to believe that these things are helpful and their healthcare therefore is compromised. So the regulatory challenge here in the Philippines, the positive suggestion we have is I think people who are in the administration should monitor and take action, doing active listening, providing early warning signals, and collaborating with other countries to share information. I think there has to be stronger consumer awareness, targeting at food safety literacy, so that they can make good choices for themselves. There should be a dedicated desk, no, in government for interagency quick response, and different agencies I listed down there uh, comes to mind. Uh, Unfortunately, laboratory capability is not very strong, and maybe there's a need for accrediting third-party private laboratory to help in investigation. And I guess it's a no-brainer. Tighter regulatory provisions is important for manufacturing and inspection work. So I end my slide here. I hope you learned something from this talk. And thank you very much for inviting me to share some of the islets to dramatize how important food safety is. It's a real problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc Ken. It's a very informative presentation. You raise a lot of examples on issues, different issues on food safety and some of the regulatory challenges that our government and also other stakeholders in Philippine society actually have to face in terms of this issue. Again, thanks a lot for that very informative presentation. Again, I'd just like to remind the participants to just make sure that your volume you're muted while the speakers and also the actors are making a presentation, and because so that they can proceed on making their discussions and presentations. So again, please make sure that you are muted. So again, thanks a lot, Doc Ken. We can now proceed to the next speaker, Dr. Romy Quijano. Dr. Romy.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the organizers for inviting me. Actually, I prepared a shorter PowerPoint presentation, but since I was not able to share my slides, so I'll just, in fact, most of these slides, I'll just go quickly over them. And as always, whenever I discuss a certain topic, I always discuss it from a very holistic perspective, and I try to look into the even for the sociocultural and political aspects of it. So if you don't mind, I'll be discussing not only food safety, but also some other structural issues related to food safety. And some of it actually can be gleaned already from the previous presentation. So let me go to the next slide, please. Can you, next slide, please. Okay, so this is, I just put in some general principles to be to serve as guidance to my discussion. And I mentioned here already also food security, as mentioned earlier by the previous speaker. We have a different idea of what is food security, and we include also, next slide please, next slide. And this is actually the official definition of food security, and we also relate that to the right to food. And I won't go into the details to this. And the next slide, please. And what I would like to emphasize is the term food sovereignty, because this is hardly mentioned by international institutions and even governments. And I would not discuss the details of it. Suffice it to say that food safety is a major component of food sovereignty, and food sovereignty is a very important adjustment to the definition of what is food security. Of course, the other elements will be very important, but I don't have to discuss the details of it. Next slide, please. So that is the definition of food sovereignty. But as I've said, I'll just go through it quite quickly. Next slide, please. So I'll emphasize more what I think is the definition of food safety. So, well, this is actually common sense, so probably I would not need to discuss in detail since I have a very limited time. Next slide, please. So what my important point here is that food security is meaningless without food safety. So that I think that's quite obvious also. Next slide, please. So, well, there are certain instances already that has been pointed out by the previous speaker, but I'd like to point out that practically every day we are being poisoned, even by the most ordinary food event that we are participating in it. As illustrated in this slide, practically all elements in a table with food contain a lot of food contaminants and toxins, and I won't be able to discuss the details of it, but you'll have an idea by what has been presented already, the food colorings, pesticides, even the solvents and things like that. Even the table itself contain, for example, formaldehyde. So all of this should be taken into consideration when discussing food safety. Next slide, please. So let us define what is a poison, because this is actually a very important element in our everyday lives. So any chemical or substance capable of producing a deleterious response or undesirable change in a living organism can be considered a poison. Ordinarily, we only consider a poison when, in a very small amount, it will seriously harm a person. We hardly consider something that can cause poisoning in the chronic, in long-term fashion. For example, a small dose of a certain chemical can produce kidney disease over the long term, but sometimes that is not considered poison in the ordinary parlance. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, okay. Just maybe 1 or 2 seconds. So, what are the effects of poisons on human health? Some have been mentioned already, so I will not go through through all of this. And just to mention that you can think of any disease, it can be caused by poisons that we are exposed to every day. And I just like to emphasize cancer, for example, and the immune system dysfunction, especially the chronic illnesses that we see nowadays, can be related to immune system dysfunction, endocrine disrupting effects, and of course the organ system dysfunctions. We have all of this now in large number of cases, and I would like to emphasize that most of this would probably be related to different kinds of poisons. Next slide, please. This is just an illustration of what I was trying to say, and there's some listing of some very prominent poisons that we've been exposed to in the past and until now, in fact, because many of the long-term, many of these chemicals are persistent. That's why we call them persistent pollutants that are also bioaccumulative. In fact, there's now an international convention called the Stockholm Convention that tries to ban at least some of these persistent pollutants that is poisoning not only our bodies but also our environment. Next slide, please. So we can classify all these poisons into agrochemicals that has been already pointed out, the pesticides and all other chemicals related to agriculture, and then the other environmental contaminants. And I would like to emphasize here radionuclides, because not too many people are aware that there's a lot of radionuclide contamination in our food, especially after the Fukushima disaster, but even going earlier back to the nuclear testing by the nuclear powers, and also from the previous nuclear power plant disasters. So we'll be going back shortly after this. And then the food additives already been mentioned, so and just go quickly through it and mention some of it along the way. Next slide, please. So I was mentioning about the Stockholm Convention, and that some of the more persistent and very toxic chemicals have already been listed, and global ban has been initiated. If you remember, we previously had this DDT, chlordane, and other organochlorines. Now there is already an international ban of these most chemicals. However, the new persistent pollutants that are still with us has not been actually been banned, except that although it has already been recommended for international banning, are the flame retardants, like the brominated flame retardants, and also the so-called PFOS, or perfluorooctane sulfonic acid group of chemicals. So a lot of these are present in our everyday life, including the upholstery in our homes, including the upholstery in our cars and things like that. Next slide, please. And there are miscellaneous contaminants. I'd like also to, what has not been mentioned is monochloropropane-diol, which has been found to be a contaminant in many soy sauce preparations, and then acrylamide, of course, in deeply fried products like French fries, and then you also have this trans fat, and there's already a regulation limiting the level of trans fat in the food. So all of this, and the other toxins that we mentioned, mycotoxins, ciguatera, and the other cyanogens also a significant source for poisoning. And then the microbial contaminants that's been mentioned, but I'd like to emphasize here the genetically modified organisms. This has not been mentioned yet, and we have been opposing actually the introduction of GMO crops like BT corn in the late 1990s, and now the BT talong and BT, and then the so-called golden rice. And I wrote a whole paper discussing the potential dangers of these products that not only harm the environment but also people because of some not easily detectable chronic effects. And then, of course, the pharmaceuticals and other supplements are also food contaminants. We have now a lot of antibiotic residues in our food because of the antibiotic treatment of animals, and also the other chemicals they are putting into the animal feeds, like, for example, hormones and things like that, including vaccines. And now they're using messenger RNA vaccines in animals. And I just recently found out that some contaminants which are probably being used now but not yet being admitted are also in the vaccines. And of course, vaccines are also being prepared now in oral form, not only injectables. So that's another topic to discuss, the toxicology of vaccines, but I don't have time to do that, so I'll just go over it. What I want to do next is to try to show you that before, there was actually a government monitoring of pesticide residues in foods, particularly vegetables and rice, and this was done by the Bureau Plant Industry. But the last time they did a systematic monitoring was still in 1990s. There was some occasional monitoring that has been done recently, but by private initiatives and some other private institutions. Next slide, please. So practically all vegetables, if you can see here, a lot of pesticides have contaminated practically all vegetables, especially those that we are very familiar with, like cabbage, carrots, ampalaya, and string beans, and so forth. So as far as I know, the last time that the Bureau of Plant Industry have done a systematic monitoring like this was in the 1990s. I don't know, maybe Kenneth can correct me if I'm wrong, if they know about it, or maybe the FAO. But as far as I know, they have not done it really systematically now. Except that recently there was some attempt, next slide please, to do similar kind of monitoring. Oh, by the way, I'd like to point out also that with the World Trade Organization agreement, they actually increased the allowable concentrations that to be allowed for importation by different countries. So I think this is a step back in terms of food safety. And this is, I think, an indication that trade takes precedence over safety. Next slide, please. I just go over this because this is just a monitoring by by some researcher in terms of the vegetable contamination by pesticides in the Benguet area, but this was done is still much earlier, 2010. And there's a more recent one. Next slide, please. A more recent one was done in 2021, and this was done in Negros, and they also tried to test the some few vegetable samples here, like the Chinese pechay, cabbage, broccoli, and the like, and they found significant contamination by some pesticide residues. Next slide, please. And again, there was also a study in Cagayan just in 2022, and as you can see, kinds of pesticides in eggplant, tomatoes, sweet pepper, okra, string beans, and bitter gourd. So you can just imagine that this contamination of most vegetables and other food products are still going on, despite the fact that there is a clear evidence of contamination over the years, and there's not been significant change, in fact, to address this very significant problem. Next slide, please. And I'd like to emphasize the pesticide Roundup because recently it's been declared a probable carcinogen by the IARC, International Agency for Research on Cancer. And it has also been causing a lot of serious kidney disease. In fact, terminal kidney disease has been found in Sri Lanka, and they associated it with the contamination because of the frequent use of Roundup or glyphosate. Next slide, please. So in fact, in the US, next slide, please, they're blaming successful lawsuits against Monsanto and recently Bayer who bought Monsanto because of Hodgkin's lymphoma that was related to the exposure to Roundup. So right now, although in some countries they banned already glyphosate, most of countries are still allowing glyphosate in use. Next slide, please. So, in fact, the amount of money paid by Monsanto already amounted to 11 million and more. In fact, because more suits have been coming in until now. It's still going on. A lot of these lawsuits are still going on. Next slide, please. Well, this is just a list of all of practically a lot of the health problems caused by glyphosate or Roundup. Next slide, please. So kidney and liver organs are main targets, and of course it has been declared as probable human carcinogen. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, now I would go to I like to go to the radionuclide contamination of food, and when the Fukushima power plant blew up, not too many people were appraised on the serious radioactive contamination in food. Earlier, there was some monitoring of all the food products that are contaminated with radioactivity. However, after a few months, there's been severe censorship, and all the independent groups that have been monitoring food contamination, radioactive contamination have disappeared because I've been following this in 2011, and I've been giving actually lectures about contamination of radioactive materials in different kinds of food, and I focused on beef, tuna, and salmon. But this has not been carried significantly by mainstream media. But until now, I can tell you that there's still significant contamination of beef, especially in Europe, coming from Europe, and salmon and tuna, even at this time. Although they say it's only very small amount, but in the absence of real independent groups that are actually independently monitoring the levels of contamination, I doubt whether what is being put out in the mainstream media is correct. Because, as you know, radioactive materials are very persistent. Next slide, please. Next slide, that's beef. Next slide, please. Fish, they have also found in fish, especially tuna, because tuna goes all around the Pacific and even reaches the coast of the North America, passing through the waters of Japan, for example. and the northern part of the Pacific. And these radioactive nuclides are accumulated by the mature tuna, including salmon. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we have also different kinds of contaminants in food. Let's go over this quickly, please. Next slide, please. Like, for example, diet soda, the presence of aspartame and other artificial sweeteners. Next slide, please. And there's been the adverse health effects has been discussed by Dr. John Olney, although it has been ignored always. And then I mentioned acrylamide in French fries. Next slide. Next slide. And this is a list of types of food products that is contaminated by acrylamide, and also trans fat is very common in processed food products, including biscuits, cakes, and the like. Next slide, please. Let's go through this very fast. Margarine is very high in trans fat, although they claim that it's been reduced already. So even the ordinary snacks that we eat, like donuts, cookies, crackers, etc., are actually with not. Although there has been like an international regulation trying to limit the trans fat, most of our processed food are not actually being monitored. Next slide, please. So in the junk food, with the junk food culture, we can expect all these contaminants. And I mentioned already chloropropanol earlier. They attempted to remove this residue, this contaminant in the different food sources like soy sauce and all those flavoring sauces. But there's been no monitoring as far as I know. Next slide, please. So monoclonal is actually found in, there's a list here of specific products that have been found to contain the monochloropropanool, but I don't know the update now whether they still contain them or not, because monitoring is, I cannot see the monitoring right now. Next slide, please. And I'd like to mention the artificial flavors, because when we go to the movies, we often order this popcorn and they put the onion flavor, garlic flavor, and whatever flavor. And people think that came actually from the actual fruit or from actual garlic or actual vegetable. In fact, most of these are actually chemicals, because now they can mimic the flavoring with synthetic chemicals as listed here. You can mimic banana with isoamyl acetate. You can mimic grapes with methyl antranilate, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So many of these so-called flavors are actually synthetic chemicals. If you find them in powder form, for example, that are very cheap, you can almost be sure that it is a synthetic chemical, not a real extract from the real food. And even coconut. In fact, I was surprised that even coconut, they already are producing artificial flavor that can mimic the taste of the coconut. And of course, cheese has always been there before. Next slide, please. How many minutes do I have left so I can know when I can hurry up?
Okay, you wrap up in maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Okay, next slide, please. I can skip that slide. Now, I'd like to emphasize the health effects of GMOs, which is not often recognized by government and even academic institutions or even science institutions. They usually trivialize these health effects. And unfortunately, the institutions that have been monitoring these health effects of GMOs have been vilified, and they've been demonized, and some of these institutions have closed actually. One of the very active institutions that has been monitoring the adverse effects of issues of GMOs and issues surrounding it is the Institute for Science in Society by Mae Wan Ho, but I think Mae Wan Ho has passed away. And the other one is from Norway, Dr. Terry Travik, who did actually study from he sampled some Biticon in Mindanao and found the effect on the immune system. So that was a list of all the possible adverse health effects of GMOs. And then recently, of course, the microplastics. So I won't go through this in detail. So just to mention it, yeah, maybe next slide. So we'll go to the then we have now microplastics in our food chain. So this is now causing also significant health effects without people knowing it and without people being aware of it. Of course, there's still a lot of information that we need to get from different institutions that are doing researches on this. There's still very few adverse effects studies that have been done, but you can be sure, because this these microplastics also carry the known toxic chemicals in plastic products, like the plasticizers, like the phthalates, for example, or even because some vinyl chloride can also be released from the vinyl plastics that are found in microplastics also. So maybe I can just go to the health effects, listing of the health effects of microplastics here. So this is a listing of the health effects of microplastics, and one of the major reasons why it can cause significant adverse health effects is some of these are nano size, in nanoparticulate size, and for example, that nanoparticulates can penetrate practically all cells in the body, just like the nano size COVID vaccines, the messenger RNA vaccines. That's explaining all the adverse reactions that we are seeing now with the COVID vaccines. Again, with the real information being censored by most mainstream media and social media. So the microplastics in nano size can also produce significant health damage merely because they are in nano size form. Next slide, please. So organ systems and well, the usual adverse health effects that we find with plastics and other toxic chemicals can be found because of microplastics. Next, please. Okay. Next, please. This is just one study I cited. By the way, in the last part of my slides, I put some references that you can go through. And well, okay. So I also would like to discuss why. Well, I actually have some slides about nanotechnology, but we can skip through that already and go through an analysis why we are in this kind of situation. So this is just a listing of what I think are the major reasons: triumph of money over health and environment. We know, of course, for example, that the big corporations are very powerful. They can influence policies of government. They can influence and even capture regulatory agencies. And of course, also the arrogance of power of top scientists and top regulators and even politicians uh, who are I would say, intoxicated with power. Gross ignorance of many well-meaning scientists, including many academics, because many academics are dependent on budget from big institutions funded by private institutions with actually profit of motivation of products that they sell. And then, of course, the misuse of science. Unfortunately, most scientific publications is now controlled by corporations, and very little independent science is going out now in our scientific publications, which has been admitted by several editors of many top scientists already who have been involved in mainstream peer-reviewed scientific journals. And then, of course, we see unethical and unprofessional behavior of many scientists and medical doctors, and I'm sad to say that I've observed personally many of this. And of course, as far as our government officials are concerned, I often hear some justifications of expediency, meaning they have to be realistic, they claim, so they can gloss over their moral duty to make sure that truth is put out to the public, and they censor certain true information because they are afraid of discrediting certain institutions, things like that, or even the reputation of certain well-known officials, things like that. And then there's lack of community participation in decision making. As we know, there's always a top-down approach in terms of policy making, and this has been illustrated quite well by the pandemic response, where there's practically no community participation, and everything that has been done was dictated by authorities like WHO, the CDC, and the others, and even academic institutions. So this illustration actually reflects the actual situation where the ordinary people actually at the mercy of big institutions, including financial institutions. Next slide, please. So this is actually my personal experience when I say that scientific advisory committee is removed instead of harmful chemicals. I have a personal experience of that. And even the toxicology committee, I was part of the toxicology committee of the government before, and we were recommending the ban, at least phase out of certain highly toxic pesticides. In reality, our committee was the one that was phased out. And then, of course, there's the harassment suits by big corporations. I also experienced this. I was sued by big pesticide corporations and also plantation corporations because I exposed the poisoning that is happening in the communities in their plantations. And then, of course, the corporate funding, which is already very common, or in fact, it is the dominant form now. Most scientific researchers now in academic institutions and even government institutions are funded by corporations with direct conflict of interest. So many results in our scientific journals are actually laden with conflict of interest. So it's very difficult now to discern which is the true findings by reading so-called peer-reviewed journals. Next slide, please. So I call this politics of toxic chemicals. In fact, I think most toxicologists are in the employ of transnational corporations or transnational corporation influenced institutions. And most scientific journals are controlled or influenced by big corporations. Even United Nations bodies dealing with chemicals are highly influenced by big business or governments protecting their interests. I have a personal experience again with this because I've been attending a lot of UN conferences involving for example, the Stockholm Convention or even other meetings with United Nations Environment Program because I was representing the environmental NGOs in these meetings. So I know with personal experience this kind of influences. Next slide, please. So in general, I would say the science policies, production, distribution, and use and disposal of toxic chemicals are influenced by political, economic, and cultural factors that should not be ignored. It's power relations, not the free market, that largely determine the toxic chemicals agenda, and that the science and policies on poison serve mainly the privileged class, the rich and the powerful, not the ordinary people, despite all the claims of democratic participation by many of these institutions. Next slide, please. So that is just an illustration. So what needs to be done? So I've listed here some suggestions. For example, we need to identify the toxic elements mainly causing or contributing to ill health. In relation to this, I discussed all the toxic elements which are mainly environmental. So I put the reference at the end of the for those who are interested to go deeper into the toxic elements that I was referring to here, and that includes also the social toxic elements, sociocultural toxic elements, not only the biological, physical, and the others. And then individually, I think someone should consult the medical facility if there are serious signs and symptoms, because sometimes you don't know exactly what are the toxic elements contributing to this. And there's really no one-to-one correspondence between a poison and an adverse effect. There's usually a multifactorial elements here, both from the cause and both on the effect. If there are no serious signs and symptoms, but you suspect some toxic elements are causing or contributing to ill health, then you should embark on a general detoxification program. And we have some recommendations regarding this, which I don't have time to discuss. Next slide, please. On a more general level, I just tried to mention maybe some of this modalities of detoxification, what I call natural self-reliant modalities. Just let your natural self detoxify. And stop exposure, of course, to these toxic elements, and put yourself in an environment conducive to detoxification, and practice a healthy lifestyle. So I put the reference here where I discuss in detail all these elements I was talking about, so you can go to that publication entitled The Holistic Approach. And then the other methods of detoxification, the natural assisted modalities, intake of detoxifying herbs and medicinal plants. I have some specific recommendations regarding that also. And also natural elements like bentonite, humic acid, fulvic acid, which is recommended by many naturopathies and other alternative physicians. And also the traditional means, which should not be taken for granted, like, for example, even fasting, hydrotherapy. Of course, some of these are controversial in mainstream medicine, but I think the individual accounts of some reliable alternative physicians should be listened to, because I think many of these are also successful. And so, of course, there are many others. Next slide, please. Oh, and also to mention also the other alternative medicine modalities that also do detoxification protocols. Next slide, please. Okay, these are now my personal recommendations for general detoxification. I cannot discuss the details of this. Suffice it to say that this is heavily on the alternative medicine side, and many of these are not yet accepted by mainstream medicine. I'd like to emphasize also my experience with Moringa oleifera, called malunggay locally, and the seeds are good detoxifying agent. In fact, a good Moringa seeds are good. It's a good water purifier, and you can assess that actually from many scientific publications. And turmeric is also one very significant, highly scientifically backed medicinal plant in terms of its anti-inflammatory property and many other medicinal benefits that can be taken from this, and many others. I cannot discuss most of this. So next slide, please. So just go through this quickly. I can just invite you to go through this. Even seaweeds are very good actually, except that be careful of seaweeds directly coming from Japan, because many of this has been found also to be contaminated with radioactivity. And then Corcorus solitorius, or what we call locally as saluyot, is also very good detoxicant, especially as a laxative. And laxatives, as you probably know, can also contribute in detoxifying our bodies whenever we are poisoned with various kinds of toxicants, especially the microbial toxicants. And then some others I cannot mention already. Yes, next slide, please. And then the usual vitamins and supplements, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, even virgin coconut oil is quite good, I would say. And activated charcoal is already a known antidote in many types of poisoning. Next slide, please.
If you can already wrap up, Dr.
Yeah,
Dr.
I think I'm finishing now. So for the vaccinated, we have a separate recommendation to detoxify the spike protein and other toxicants from the vaccines. Okay, next slide, please. So I can just through the okay, so this is just the general socio-political level suggestion. Stop intrusive exploitative legalization, develop alternative trading systems, shift to agroecological system, healthy. This is my grandson promoting sustainable agriculture. Next slide, please. Next slide, next slide. And benefits of organic farming. Next slide, please. They're almost there. So also, I'd like to emphasize the precautionary principle, because sometimes they say that there's not enough scientific evidence to show that a certain chemical is poisonous. But why wait for that scientific evidence when there's already some good case studies? Next slide, please. So, in summary, this I think is what needs to be done. I think this is self-explanatory. I don't have time now to explain in detail here, but I think you can also understand this just by looking at it. I'd like to emphasize the last one, empowerment of people, because I think the only long-term solution is when people are empowered, so that they take help into their own hands. That has been our cry from a long time ago, when I was still a student activist. Until now, that's what we are crying for. Help in the hands of the people, not in the hands of scientists, not in the not in the hands of doctors, not in the hands of politicians, etc. I think we're in the last slide now. Thank you very much. Oh, maybe the last slide. Next, please. Next. Community empowerment starts from small meetings and eventually community action in large scale. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Dr. Romino, for the very comprehensive presentation on poisons, no, and toxins, and also surrounding political issues. Perhaps we can have a webinar in the future, to discuss some of the aspects of your presentation. But thank you for the points. No? So again, at this point, I'd like now to again thank all of our speakers. Dr. Labadi, Dr. Hartigango, and Dr. Quijano for their presentations. And then I'd like to also introduce our reactors. Fortunately, because of the interest on this topic, we have several reactors coming from our students in different universities in the country, and also from different representatives of community organizations as well, including here in Metro Manila. So let me just again introduce the reactors one by one, and then ask them to give their reactions on the presentation. So we have 3 student reactors and then 3 community organization reactors. So for our first student reactor, she's Miss Len Juliet Lapatis, who is the president of Samahan. For this year at the Ateneo de Davao University, she served as School of Nursing representative in the last year, in 23-24, and was the president of the Nursing Student Executive Council. So Ms. Lapatis is a nursing student at the Ateneo de Davao. Our second reactor is Ms. Lynn Paul Grace Cabiladas, who is a graduating food technology student at Xavier University, Ateneo de Cagayan, and is the current president of the Philippine Association of Food Technologies, ETA Student Chapter. She led the PAFT Student Chapter Summit Northern Mindanao in 2023 and has a lot of experience as being a student in food safety and quality management. Our third reactor is Ms. Kyla Elisa Sakmar, a fourth-year BS Health Sciences student here at the Ateneo de Manila University. She serves as the Vice President for Public Health Relations in the Health Sciences Society and advocates for nutrition, wellness, environmental justice, and indigenous people's rights. So maybe we can have first the 3 reactors coming from our student sector. Ms. Lapatis, Len Juliet, are you here?
Yes po, good afternoon everyone. So to our esteemed panel of speakers, my fellow reactors, ladies and gentlemen, a matches afternoon to all. So first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our organizers for the invitation to be one of the reactors for this insightful webinar, and allow me to share my reflection about this webinar. So as an Atenean and as a student nurse, reflecting on the state of food safety in the Philippines calls us to consider not only the scientific and regulatory aspects, but also the moral and ethical dimensions of this issue. Food safety is not just a matter of public health, it is a fundamental human right and a cornerstone of social justice. The gaps in our food safety systems reveal deeper issues of inequality, governance, and stewardship of the resources entrusted to us. Ensuring food safety is vital for promoting overall well-being and preventing disease, particularly in vulnerable communities. The Food Safety Act of 2013 was a significant step toward addressing the fragmented regulatory landscape in our country. However, its implementation has faced numerous challenges, from insufficient infrastructure to overlapping responsibilities among agencies. This reflects a broader systemic issue, the need for effective governance and accountability. Therefore, as we address these issues in today's times, it is imperative to send a clear message highlighting the need to address the lack of integrity within agencies that influence food safety. As Ateneans, we are called to lead by example in promoting integrity and excellence in all fields, including public health and food safety. Our Jesuit education emphasizes being men and women for others, which means advocating for the vulnerable populations most affected by foodborne illnesses. And as a future healthcare professional, I see firsthand how these gaps lead to frequent cases of foodborne illnesses affecting especially the young, the elderly, and those with compromised immune systems. Moreover, the issue of food safety is deeply intertwined with environmental sustainability. Improper agricultural practices, the use of harmful pesticides, and inadequate food handling processes not only compromise food safety but also harm our environment. In the spirit of Laudato Si, Pope Francis' encyclical on care for our common home, we must promote sustainable agricultural practices that ensure the health of both people and the planet. And this holistic approach aligns with the Ignatian principle of finding God in all things, urging us to see the interconnectedness of our actions and their impact on the world. By promoting education, advocating for stronger regulatory measures, and addressing the social determinants of health, we can make significant strides in improving food safety. And this will not only reduce the incidence of foodborne illnesses, but also enhance the overall health and quality of life for the people we serve. Lastly, addressing food safety in the Philippines requires more than technical solutions. It demands a commitment to justice, integrity, and stewardship. As Filipinos, as Ateneans, and as a student nurse myself, we are called to use our education and resources to advocate for effective policies, educate the public, and support sustainable practices. By doing so, we contribute to a society where everyone has access to safe, nutritious food, reflecting the core values of our Jesuit education and our responsibility to serve others. Our role extends beyond the clinical setting. We are educators, advocates, and leaders in our communities dedicated to promoting a safer, healthier, and more just world. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Lapatis, no, for your remarks on trying to strengthen governance and integrity, no, in our different institutions. Now, let's hear from Ms. Cabiladas of Xavier University.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Limpo Grace Cabiladas from Xavier University, Ateneo de Cagayan, a fourth-year BS Food Technology student. I am grateful for the opportunity to share my reactions to today's insightful presentations focusing on food safety, and the discussions have been enlightening and have significantly impacted my understanding and perspective on this critical issue. So to start off, listening to the first speaker, as a food technologist, I gained a deeper understanding of the vital role of FAO in advocating for food safety. Dr. Dabadi highlighted the actions, plans, and current global challenges faced in ensuring food safety. It is important that I, as a food technologist, is informed about organizations like FAO, which are directly related to my field of study. Understanding the existing initiatives and standards implemented by FAO ensures that I stay educated and informed. This knowledge is crucial as I work to advocate for food safety and contribute meaningfully to the field of the food technology. And lastly, he also emphasized the FAO's commitment to leaving no one behind by involving all the stakeholders in effective food safety management, which is important as everyone is involved and at risk when food safety is compromised. Moving on, as I listen to the second speaker, Dr. Hartigan Go's presentation on food safety and toxicology in the Philippines. As a fourth-year food technology student, it significantly broadened my understanding. I gained insights in his presentation, which highlighted the regulatory challenges faced by the Philippines in ensuring food safety. This has made me realize the complexity of the task at hand and the essential need for collaboration and shared intelligence among government agencies. I am now more aware of the gaps in our current regulatory system and the importance of tighter provisions in manufacturing, inspection, and enforcement. And finally, for Dr. Quijano's presentation on food safety and poisons in food, it profoundly impacted me and it heightened my awareness of the potential dangers of food contamination, educating me about various agents and contaminants that can jeopardize food safety. As a food technologist, I recognize the critical role that we have in safeguarding public health through safe and nutritious food. Additionally, his presentation sparked my curiosity and deepened my desire to learn more about food safety measures and contamination prevention strategies. His emphasis on ethical practices in the food industry heightened my awareness of the harmful effects of certain chemicals, which can affect the human health and the environment. Overall, the presentation has motivated me to continue learning and working towards a safer and healthier food system. As a food technology student, we are extensively taught about the importance of food safety. It is vital for everyone to understand that food should not merely satisfy hunger, but must also provide essential nutrition without posing any health risk. Ensuring that food does not make us sick or endanger our lives is a fundamental aspect of our education as food technology students. Safe food practices go beyond preventing immediate illnesses and are essential for fostering long-term health and well-being. This understanding underscores our collective responsibility to uphold strict standards in food handling, preparation, and consumption. As future food technology, as future food technologies, I am dedicated to fostering a culture of food safety, making these practices second nature to protect public health and enhance the quality of life for everyone. And that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cabiladas, no, for your remarks and trying to highlight the important points that our speakers gave and your appreciation that you also gave, no, to their presentation. So, dagang salamat. Next, let's hear from Ms. Sakmar of Ateneo de Manila.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank our organizers for this opportunity to learn from our esteemed experts. And actually, there are a lot of technical discussions which I can comment on. There are a lot to take because I'm not an expert on a certain science. I'm a health sciences major where we are taught of the holistic concept or of health. So we are no expert on food technology or other nursing or other expertise. So my perspective would be as a health science major and my personal curiosity to the issue of food safety. So I'll emphasize those that struck me the most and also those that had relations with my past knowledge. So for the talk of Dr. Dabadi, what struck me the most is the discussion on interconnectedness of different dimensions of our food system since it's a holistic concept of approaching this issue of food safety, and it also emphasizes on the collaboration, partnership, and knowledge sharing that every level of our society should be involved with. So I think I think that it is the most effective approach, but it's a difficult and extensive endeavor. And so I think we need to have like patience and the rigor to go on as someone who want to contribute to our society and our health as well. So I also would like to emphasize the FAO information and tools to make informed choices. So I want to emphasize this because as our role, as I'm a vice president for public health relations and we do like information dissemination. And for me, it's important to keep track of these info resources from esteemed experts or organizations and not and like center these information center the issue of food safety or base the issue of food safety in these information. So also have a question for Dr. Dabadi. You mentioned a while ago po na you also have efforts on the national level to evaluate and strengthen their food control systems in less developed countries. So how are FAO efforts on strengthening these control systems on less developed countries or those countries that are not that proactive in participating in FAO and WHO efforts? So that's one po. You can answer it on the comments or later po. So moving on to Dr. Goss talk. One thing that struck me is there are diverse sources of food nowadays, and thus more mechanisms of contamination. like our current food system is have more inorganic food sources, and talking in a like a more layman perspective, some of these are less pricey than organic food and ingredients, and these are the issues in our current food systems na we cannot like give a solution, one perspective solution to, because these food sources are what's available to most of our population. So I think um ayun po, these are one of the nuisance of food safety as well. And I also would like to comment on the false claims on products such as pharmaceutical products, that we should also have stronger consumer awareness, not only on social media, but also on the more prone or vulnerable um, communities and individuals that can be affected by these false claims or false news on food products and other consumable products. And lastly, for wait lang. For Dr. Quijano, um, I I was struck with like the poisons in our food, his discussion on poisons in our food, because I have an interest in gut health. So I think I I resonate to the quote or statement that we are what we eat. So our most conditions starts in our gut, and so we are reminded to be mindful of what we eat, the ingredients we use, the food that we consume, and where they are sourced. So and another I nuance opinions about that is we also have sources that we can track, and we have no control of consuming, like what Dr. Quijano said a while ago. Those are our staple products or our staple food, like soy sauces, condiments. So I think we have no control of the current food system nga, that we are in. And so I think that the responsibility of food safety in that aspect falls on our existing regulatory systems, policies, and how are they implemented. So um another thing that struck me also are the commercial and political determinants of health. Like, I deeply resonated with the capitalistic issue in our food systems. Like, there are a lot in the Philippines. There are a lot of food corporations that prioritize profit over health, and I also resonated with the scientific publications being controlled, because it also affects us students, because it will cascade us using these untruthful or not not the whole truth evidences or false evidences in our education will cascade into something that is um it's counterproductive in our education, to say the least. So that struck me as well as a student. And I also want to know how, for Dr. Quijano, I also want to know how these food safety issues, particularly on possible contamination, can have differential effects on the different socioeconomic statuses, because these factors like socioeconomic statuses can also influence the difference in our diets. So you can also comment your answer in the chat box po. And so the main points or the main insights that I got from this talk is, since our current system have different diverse sources of food now, what I think we can do as common people to minimize them is to like take part on the effective dissemination of these crucial informations that would allow us consumers to care and be mindful of the cautions of the food that we eat. I think that these organizations have laid out, FAO, WHO, and our regulatory systems have laid out their knowledge, their capacities. But as lay people, we can also bring the action. But as policymakers, we can also bring the actions downstream in communities and in the knowledge of the students. And also, as brought up by Dr. Quijano, like our own efforts to bring our conditions to, we need to like and have our own efforts to bring our conditions to better health or highest health. Like we can also do yun nga po, natural solutions in detoxification as discussed by Dr. Quijano. And lastly, as students, I think we can bring the most impact on consumer education. It's one aspect that we as students can contribute as of now. And yes, thank you for listening to my comments.
Okay, thank you. I think you raised, thank you, Ms. Akbar. You raised a lot of questions, and maybe we can answer some of the questions during the open forum to the speakers. Okay, so at this point, so again, thank you again to all our student reactors. No? So we'd like now to ask our reactors coming from community organizations, and let me just introduce them again, no, one by one. Our first reactor coming from our partner community organizations is Ms. Bernadette Sabaysa. Ms. Bernadette Sabaysa is the president of Samahang Magkakapitbahay sa Sleep Zero in Tondo, Manila. And her organization is committed to improving living conditions and fostering community. No? Our second community partner speaker is Mr. Renato Ibabaw, who is a resident of Pier 18 of Happy Land in Tondo, Manila. He provides valuable insights into the challenges faced by his community in terms of food safety. And our last, not the least, no, community organization representative or the actor is Ms. Filomena Cinco, who's a former barangay captain of the Estero de San Miguel, Sampaloc, and also is a people's organization leader of the Nagkakaisang Mamayan na Legarda, also in Manila. So thank you very much for the actors for accepting this invitation. Let's first call on Ms. Bernadette Sabalsa. Bernadette Sabalsa, nandyan po ba kayo?
Magandang hapon po.
Magandang hapon. May reaction po kayo sa mga...
Naririnig niyo po ako?
Oo, malinaw ho naman. Malinaw kayo.
Ako nga pala si Bernadette Sabalsa ng Samahang Magkapitbahay sa Sleep Zero, na ang aming samahan ang nakapaloob sa COSMAT, koalisyon ng organisadong samahan ng Maralitang Tagalungsod ng Urban Poor Associate. Nakatira po ako sa Tondo. Natutuwa po ako at napasama ako dito sa usaping ito. At kami po yung ang po namin ay nagluluto ng pagpag. Yun po ang pagpag po ay yun yung mga natitira na mga pagkain galing sa mga food chain. At yun po ay, yun ang pinagkakakitaan namin. Yun yung hanap buhay namin. Yun po ay yung mga tira-tira po na pagkain yun yung galing sa mga food chain at mga fast food niluluto uli namin. At masarap naman dahil na luluto namin ng maayos, dumadaan naman sa apoy at yun lang ang kakayahan namin na sa katunayan, yun din yung binibenta namin, yung inaano namin sa pastel. Kaya yun yung pinagkakakitaan namin. Nagtatanim din kami ng mga gulay sa aming community dahil kami may 15 organization na nakapaloob sa Urban Poor Associate. Parang naano kami dito na napasama kami dito sa usaping ito na magkaroon ng food security at saka food safety. Pero sana mababaan yung mga community namin, maturuan kami, matulungan man kami para magkaroon kami ng pagkakataon na ma-improve namin. Sa katunayan, meron kaming mga urban gardening, nagtatanim kami, pero maliit lang yung mga espasyo namin. Tapos, nagsisegregate din kami. Yung mga plastic, yun yung inaano namin na hindi na mapunta sa dagat dahil kami, malapit kami sa pier. Kaya yun yung mga ano namin na natutuwa kami, napasama kami dito. Sa katunayan, ako nung panahon ng pandemic, namumulot ako ng gulay sa Divisoria dahil gutom na talaga yung community namin dahil may lockdown pa. Ang ginagawa namin, namumulot kami ng mga tinatapon ng gulay sa Divisoria. Yun yung naging routine na namin yun. Sa madaling araw dahil yung mga nagtitinda sa Divisoria tinatapon na nila yung mga natitira nilang gulay. Yun na yung pinamumulot namin at dinadala namin sa community namin, pinamimigay din namin sa mga membro namin. Pero kung may pagkakataon lang kami na magkaroon kami ng lupa na mapagtaniman, masisipag naman kaming mga urban poor. Dahil tinuturuan din naman kami ng aming NGO kung paano kami makapag-urban gardening. Thank you po.
Sige, maraming salamat, Bernadette. No? So, for the participants who listened to her brief reaction on the presentations, no? So Bernadette Sabas again is a community leader, no, coming from the one of our neighborhood associations in Tondo, Manila, and she talked about the issue, no, that they have, no, in terms of yung pagpag, no, so that the reheated food, no, coming from the different food chains, and maybe also it might be important to look into the that organizations, no, support them, no, in terms of their food sustainability and also food safety initiatives, no, and one of their advocacies, no, she said, no, is their issue, no, in terms of land, so maybe so that they can undertake more food production, no, among the households, no, in the area. So maraming salamat uli, no, Bernadette Sabalsa, no. So let's have Mr. Renato Ibabaw. Nandiyan po ba kayo, Mr. Renato? Sige, I think we're still missing Mr. Ibabaw, but maybe we can go first to the next, si Miss Filomena Cinco, a former barangay captain of Estero de San Miguel, Sampaloc.
Magandang hapon po sa atin lahat.
Magandang hapon din po. Narinig po kayo.
Yes
Gusto
po.
pong buksan po yun yung video o manahirapan po ba kayo? Ayan.
Muli po, kami po ay nagpapasalamat sa paanyaya na kami maging bahagi, maging reactor po. Kasamahan ko din po si Bernadette sa Balsa. Kami po yung sinasabi niyang kabilang sa COSMAT. Ito po yung koalisyon ng organisadong Samahang Maralitang Tagalungsod. Kami po ay 15 samahan na inorganisa po ng Urban Poor Association. Ang maibabahagi ko po at ang gusto ko lang pong bago ko po ibigay mamaya yung reaction namin, nung ako po ay barangay chairman ng barangay 412, tapos ko lang po ng term ko, 3-term barangay chairman and at the same time Garda, isa po siyang community-based organization na nagsulong po ng land and housing tenure po, yung right to the city. So nakuha po namin yung programang yon and at the same time po ay kasunod po ng pabahay ay yun po yung food security para po sa mamamayan ng Taga-Estero. Sa karanasan po namin, kami po naman ay gumawa ng iba't ibang paraan para masiguro na merong pagkain na malinis at abot kaya po, libre nga po kung tutusin. Kasi nag-practice po kami ng urban gardening, ito po yung vertical type, ito po yung mga technology o programa na ibinaba po sa amin ng DOST NCR. Kasalukuyan ongoing po itong ginagawa namin. Mahigit na pong 4 na taon. Nag-umpisa po ito nung pandemic na siyang naging sagot sa food security. So meron po kaming vertical gardening at meron din po kaming hydroponics. Itong hydroponics na ito ay sagot na po sa aming mga consumption na gulay na sariwa, libre at malinis. Ganon din po, dahil ang ginagamit namin sa mga urban gardening namin, lalo na po yung hydroponics, ito po yung mga recycled na yung mga cups po, styro cups na ginagamit.
Yeah, I think we lost Miss Sabal's. Sorry. Yeah. Miss Cinco, sorry, in the video. But we hope that we can have her again in a while.
Sagot din po nito na yung pagbabawas po ng mga plastic waste. So kami po ay natutuwa dahil doon nakita namin na sa what needs to do ay nabanggit po doon na to empower people. So kami po yung sa COSMAT, masasabi po namin mga empowered people na po kami, community. Lahat po naman ay gusto namin na magkaroon kami ng ligtas na mga pagkain. Pero may mga kasamaan ho talaga tayo, katulad ng sa grupo nila Ate Bernadette, na talagang yung pagpag ay naging source ng kanilang pagkain. So, sino po ba ang hindi magugustuhin na magkaroon po ng isang malinis, maayos, masustansya at ligtas na pagkain? Ang dami po, katulad po kanina ng mga unang pinesent ng ating mga speaker, magaganda po yung mga programa, magaganda po yung mga pag-aaral na ginagawa, at magaganda po lahat yung presentation. Kaya lang po, ang hamon ko po, sana po ito ay may cascade, may ibaba sa mga urban poor na katulad namin, upang masabi po natin na ang mga programang ito ay talagang tatagos sa katulad po namin nasa laylayan ng lipunan. Ang ganda po siya na masasayang lang po kung siya ay mananatiling nakasulat lang. Dapat po ito ay mai-translate into program. Dapat po ay meron pong action. Maibaba ito, talaga pong para sa ganun maramdaman po namin na ay tumagos sa amin, ma-practice po sana natin ito. Yung theory po kasi, theory lang po yan. Hindi ho siya mata-translate kung hindi ito may implement. So dahil nabanggit doon na needs to do, empower po ang mga tao. Yung 15 organization po na nakapaloob sa COSMAT ay mga empowered at organisadong samahan na po ito. At pwede nyo kaming maabot, ma-reach sa pamamagitan po ng Urban Poor Associates. Sana ang nais ko, reaction namin dito, matranslate po natin ito. Ma-implement ang mga programa, mga studies na ito. Gawin po ninyo kami pilot project at willing po kami na makipag-cooperate sa inyo upang mapalaganap natin na ang ginagawa ng katulad ninyong nasa academe ay may ginagawa kayong maganda para masiguro natin na magkaroon ng itong safe bites, i-navigate po natin sa mundo po ng food safety ang lahat ng pag-aaral at mga ginagawa po ninyo. So sabi po, partnership po ang kailangan dito dahil kami naman po mga mahihirap ay hindi po kami mga tamad. Kulang lang kami na opportunity at nandyan lahat ang mga pag-aaral, andyan yung mga matatalino, yung
See, I think we lost. Sige, go ahead.
Sa ating lahat.
Sige, maraming salamat ho Barangay Captain Cinco no, sa inyong binahagi ngayong hapon no, yung kalaganan na may baba no, yung iba't ibang mga programa sa mga iba't ibang mga grupo sa pamayanan no, tulad ng mga Maralitang Tagalunsod no. Okay, so thank you again no, to all the actors no, and also to all our speakers this afternoon so on this very important issue really and very topical issue no, of food safety no, as Dr. Ken Hartigango and also Dr. Romy Quijano said earlier no, so this is a very important issue, malagang issue nga ito sa ating bansa dahil maraming nakikita natin no, na nagiging issue no, na nakabahagi ng food safety. Sige, let's now go to it's 4:10 in my watch and maybe we can have an open forum for around 30 to 40 minutes. So I hope that we won't keep our speakers no, and also the actors beyond 5 p.m. So maybe we can open the floor to any questions that you may have. But before we open the floor, I guess the actors already gave a few questions, and some of them were even answered in the chat box. No, so the question to the FAO, which Dr. Dabadi Lionel already answered, is and also I think these are the questions that our community organization, the actors, no. Ms. Cinco and also Ms. Sabalsas also asked, no, is whether FAO no, can bring the programs, no, the very excellent programs no, that you've undertaken no, at the national level, no, and also among community organizations. But Lionel, I think your response no, is that the need to engage also LGUs no, in trying to these issues. Yeah.
Yes, I think you know, FAO, we are not intervening in the country. We are working with the government. That's the mandate in the Philippines. There is a government. There is a competent government. Of course, not perfect. Nobody is perfect. But the way we work is really to identify the gaps to make the countries become as best as possible. So definitely in the Philippines, you know, many dimensions related to the food safeties are under the LGUs. And definitely the enforcement, in particular the enforcement of food safety and hygiene, is under the LGU. So definitely, if we want to work and improve the food safety in the Philippines, we need to work with the LGU. And of course, the challenge is how can we work with, I don't know how many, I think there are 40 or 50,000 LGUs all over the country. So how can we reach out to this country? How can we upscale the support to the countries? But the way we work, yes, definitely is try to, we are not here to replace the government, but to identify the gaps and help fill the gaps. That's the way we are working with the countries all over the world.
Sige, and related to that, Lionel, and also maybe Dr. Lionel, and also maybe I can ask also Doc Ken and Doc Robbie, in your observation, in the Philippine situation, are the local institutions becoming better, in terms of monitoring all of these issues related to food safety? And what do you think, for example, are the gaps? Maybe you can talk also both at the national and local level. And I think in your presentation, you spoke of some of the gaps, but what are these significant challenges that our institutions are facing in terms of the improvement in food safety? May I ask first, I don't know, Dr. Lionel, if you want to give a response, or...
I will not necessarily have a response from FAO point of view, but you may know that before I joined FAO, I've been working with a French company, French Research Institute, and actually my work was to help BFAR be compliant with international food safety standards for the shrimp and the tuna area. And what I realized is that the people were very competent in terms of theoretical knowledge, but they didn't know how to implement it practically. And there was a need for making first to convince the people that they can do it, because many times when you speak only about theoretical principles like HACCP or this kind of things, the people, or traceability, all those big and very important dimensions of food safety, the people they don't necessarily see how to implement it. So it's very important that instead of giving theoretical training, we give practical training, meaning we go with the people, we go in the regional office, we go in the local office, and we show to the people how to implement risk analysis, how to implement traceability, etc., etc., etc. So I think that's really the way, be practical and not theoretical. Theoretical, everybody can learn the theory, but the practice, implementing practically something very, very, very important. And actually, Philippines can do a lot when it comes to this experience of BFA. It was in 25, and in just 18 months, the Philippines have been able to be compliant with the international food safety standards, and that was very, very quick. Another thing, it's really that we need to have a real enforcement. I'm not a big fan of repression, etc. But for example, one of the big problems that BFAR was facing at the time was antibiotics in feeds. And the problem is that for this, there were hundreds of cases every year. And from the day that BFAR has started implementing a real monitoring and destructions of the contaminated feed, the number of non-compliances have fallen from hundreds every year to less than, I think it was two in a year or something like that. So definitely, monitoring and the real monitoring is doing a lot of work. So that's why it's important to make sure that you monitor the food safety, because like this you can really have a major improvement in the overall situation in a very limited period of time.
Thank you for those points. So Doc Ken or Doc Romy, with regards to the point that Dr. Lionel gave about we having very good personnel in terms of the ethical knowledge, but the issue really here in the country is implementation. So I don't know if you have any observations also on this as well. So Dr. Romy, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, as you probably have guessed from my presentation, I emphasize more the structural causes of all these problems. And I think the Philippines has not really become an independent. We've been a colony of foreign powers ever since until now, I think. And if we're talking about empowerment of the people, you can only achieve that if there's real democracy. And there's been no real democracy in the Philippines. Like, for example, majority of our farmers are still landless. And the cry for genuine land reform has not been really answered for so long a time until now. So if you have the majority of the people and the farmers with no effective power in terms of running the government, even at the local level, you really don't have that kind of progress. How will you implement all these good programs if you don't have that real democracy? And the workers also, you know that the situation of the workers here is really very bad. Uh, I've been working with farmer groups and workers groups, and it's really appalling that instead of real uplifting the situation of the workers, it's getting worse. And most social analysts can attest to that. Situation of the farmers, situation of the workers. So that's why my last slide is on empowerment of the people, as pointed out by our reactor from the urban poor area. So well, there's a lot of angles to it. Of course, there are corollaries to this, including education and things like that, health. But I think the bottom line is still the structural, sociocultural issues. We haven't really attained a real independence.
Okay, so thank you for that point. So the question really is, how do we capacitate or maybe strengthen our institutions, if without strengthening also the difficulty of strengthening democratic participation among the marginalized. So yeah, let's go also to Doc Ken. I don't know if you have also want to make a comment on the point on the issue of how our institutions have fared, and then in terms of food safety, and how do you think maybe we can strengthen even our local organizations, local institutions, in trying to monitor better this food safety? So to Doc Ken. So maybe Doc Ken is out, but okay, maybe we'll just go back to Doc Ken in a while, but maybe let's check for there are a few other questions that have already been raised here, and these are questions related to the issue of poisons, and food safety. That are there any solutions? And I address this question to Dr. Quijano. Are there any solutions that we can find in terms of addressing issues related to poisons? And what are measures that can be undertaken not to address these food poisoning issues? You've cited Dr. Romy earlier, maybe detoxification, but that can be done on a personal level, but more at the institutional level or from macro level. What suggestions would you address?
Actually, I put that in my PowerPoint presentation. At the individual level, you can do certain things as I outlined there, including detoxification, but more importantly, at the social level, as I mentioned earlier, the addressing the structural reasons why we are in this poison situation, as I mentioned there. Specifically, for example, the corporate power that we are confronted with my personal experience, every effort that we do at the academic, scientific, and even at the community level has always been thwarted by corporate power influence on government and regulatory agencies. So it's still the fundamental problem of power relations is there. And I mentioned also as an outline in my last slide, the acronym antidote, meaning awareness raising, because most people, especially the marginalized, because of their poverty perhaps, are not really aware of what is really happening at the socio-political level. And therefore, community organizing is very important, but it's not enough. That kind of community organizing should lead to a real empowerment of the awareness of what the rights are. For example, the right to food. How do they assert the right to food? It's not palliative solutions are not enough. Community pantries are not enough. So it has to be expressed in terms of actual power of the community people in influencing the policies at their local level. For example, in terms of, for example, there's a policy of lockdown. Who decides who implements the lockdown? It's top-down approach. It's not the community level. The people are just forced to follow. Or for example, mass vaccination. They don't even know what kind of mass vaccination is that, but yet they are forced to be vaccinated. There's no real people power there. So in this kind of policy, that's the same thing with food safety. They don't even know that it's being contaminated because they have no chance to really be informed about it. Because every day, this bombardment of advertisements on TV, on radio, even pharmaceuticals. Every day you see that, this paracetamol is safe, and in fact, it's not safe. Things like that. So awareness raising is very important at the community level. Then I mentioned also that is also not enough because you have to have some technical capacity at the local level. You don't have to rely on experts because people, as mentioned earlier, also by our reactor, there are intelligent people at the community level and they can learn some technical things and should not depend on the dictates of even by the medical doctor. And this COVID pandemic, so-called pandemic, has illustrated the fact that you should not rely mainly by what the doctor tell you in terms of vaccination, for example. That's another big issue. So all down the line. That's why I put there also deepening of understanding because it's not easy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of awareness. It takes a lot of experience also. Takes a lot of consultation with other groups who it takes a lot of independent information, and that's one big problem because we hardly have independent sources of information. You cannot rely on Facebook, you cannot rely on YouTube, you cannot even rely now on scientific publications. So that's why we need to come up with alternative sources of information. They are there, but they are being censored. In fact, I've been writing about this COVID pandemic since it started, but I was heavily censored by every platform, by Facebook, by YouTube, even by Gmail, even by Google, things like that. So our voices were not heard. And we also sought audience with the Department of Health. They just, they just simply ignored us. Even my colleagues at the university just simply ignored what we have to say about the dangers of the wrong pandemic response that's being implemented by the government. So this is also true with food safety issues. I experienced that earlier about the issue of pesticides. I mentioned to you, we recommended to ban these very dangerous pesticides.
Okay.
It took a long time. So all this is already there. Just to go into the details of the acronym I put there, antidote acronym. So I think you will understand what I mean.
Okay, so thank you again, Dr. Omino. So I guess you raised the importance really of developing not only strengthening the strength also of the marginalized groups now to better understand this issue, but also the importance really of a consumer movement. Let's go now to some of the other. I think there's a question here in the chat box now for Dr. Lionel. About from coming from the Office of Food Safety and Quality from my own university, Ateneo de Manila. Is it really expensive to eat healthy food? So, for example, in the Philippines, food safety, nutrition, food quality has high costs attached to it. And once our farmers, for example, have their food products tested for pesticides and veterinary residues, it adds to the cost of food. No? So can you give examples of effective government policies that have been translated to provide a sustainable food system, but is also affordable, safe, and also nutritious, especially in the context of developing countries? Lionel?
Yeah, it's quite a difficult question to answer. I don't think there is one example of everything perfect. You have to make, the rule generally is the rule is that you should base the monitoring on the risk. If you are a big company that is selling to thousands of people, you are more likely to have a high risk than if you are just a small farmer producing. So definitely you are not going to impose on the small producers the same conditions that you impose on the big companies, because the risks are different. Also, depending if you are a producer of fruits and vegetables, the risks are much lower than if you are producers of meat or other products that are perishable. I would say that this has to be, this is part of the overall mandate of the government, I think, to ensure the food safety. Typically, one of the challenges that you have in the Philippines is at the same time the logistic challenge for reaching the markets. It's extremely difficult and almost impossible for the small producers to reach the market. So they rely on middlemen, and most of the time the middlemen are not very rich people. They are also, so for example, the cold chain. Speaking of the cold chain, is a challenge, and many times when you go to the market, even in the high-end supermarkets in Manila, and you look at fish, for example, this is my area, fish doesn't look very fresh as it is in other countries. So definitely there is a need for if we want to improve the quality and the safety of the product, then we need to have also all the logistic that goes together with the food safety. The food safety is not something of the farmer; it's something that goes from the farmers all the way to the consumers. And many times also the food safety, the product can reach the consumer safe, and then the consumer will be mishandling it or forget it in the fridge, or I don't know, everything. And so the need, the food safety should really be holistic and include all the elements from the farm to the producers. So when it comes to the cost, unfortunately, I think that it is expensive in the Philippines to have a healthy diet, because not so much because it is difficult, but because the junk food and the unhealthy food is much cheaper than healthy food. One example we have, I attended recently a PhD, a doctoral student presenting his research, and he showed that in Palawan, the people, they have been monitoring the fish stocks, and they saw that the fish stocks were able to recover after a lot of effort. And you could expect that if the fish stock are recovering, the people could be eating more healthy food, because fish is a healthy food. But in fact, no, because the people, they prefer to sell the healthy food, and in return eat junk food. So that's really that's why we say there is no simple solution to this complex system. And why we are promoting agri-food system is because we need to understand all the dimensions. It would be, definitely the questions of Mr. Montaner is very very relevant, because it's in terms of pesticide. There is pesticide inventory and analysis. The analysis should not be something based on the that to be supported by the producer, unless it's a big producer. But if it's a small producer, it should not be based on this. And in some countries, like in Europe, for example, you are not making samples, and you are not making analysis for 100% of the production. You are only targeting where there is a risk. So that's the kind of management you can do to reduce the cost, and the cost ultimately should be with the government.
Thank you very much for emphasizing the point, really, to look at this as a systemic issue. So food safety is not just, as you said earlier, it's not just part of the producer or the trader or the consumer themselves, but we have to look at it as a system-wide issue, and try to address. Of course, and also, as you said, there are also many corresponding issues that are related to food safety. So I guess that's really important, that we have to look into. Let me again also look at the chat and also read some of the messages coming from our participants. So one coming from Lilibeth Liguden says that maybe the government should, again, as Dr. Lionel said earlier, and also I think Dr. Romy also earlier pointed out, the issue really of genetically modified organism, GMO, is products, no, it's very controversial in the country. On the one hand, parang we know that the producers of GMO no want to increase food production, and so then address the problem of undernutrition in the country. But again, so Lilibeth points out, no, that there are also biosafety issues that also may be considered. That therefore the precautionary principle should always prevail, and therefore the government no, should support local initiatives on food safety, no, in these cases, no. So maybe listen more to what local people hear, no. And also, our professor, know that you've been engaging as well in some of the farmers, no, groups, but maybe can your organization also engage more with urban poor organizations as well, no, in terms of looking how to engage them in food security action. And as Dr. Mary said, no, go to communities and listen to residents, especially to the organized people's organization who have their own already food security plan. So maybe work more, as you said, Dr. Romy, with more community urban poor organizations on their food safety issues.
Well, well, actually, I was citing the story of the barangay captain. Uh, it looks like it's a success story on their part. That's why I was citing it as an example of at least at a local level, there is some kind of empowerment. But that's not enough. If we look at the national level, especially what is happening in the rural areas, and even in here, because I was also involved in many urban poor communities, and the experience of the barangay captain who spoke is not the same as the experience of the urban poor communities in many other areas in Manila, or even in Cavite, or even in Batangas, or even in Cebu, because I've been also working with urban communities for a long time, for probably 3 decades already. And in my experiences, I seldom find a success story of community governance efforts being listened to by the local higher officials like the mayor or governor. And perhaps the experience of COSMAT is different. So it might be good to have a write-up of their experience, because then it might inspire other communities. But again, I don't know exactly what level of success they have attained in terms of actually influencing the local government governance of other major issues that concern the community. So perhaps in food safety, that might be one good example, and the other issues, especially in environmental issues, like for example, waste management, and that would be the easier arena to actually engage the community with. But when it comes to human rights, for example, or basic rights of the community to have decent housing and land, and decent work with sufficient compensation of salary, and those communities that are being evicted from so-called squatter areas, these are different experiences that we need to gather and look at the national level. And this, if there are success stories in the capital region, what was being mentioned here by COSMAT, then I think that should be highlighted by the mainstream media and perhaps looked at by the other communities. So I was actually citing it as a good example.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Romy, for that. So, trying to look really, I mean, you raised the important point, especially in your early presentation, of trying to make sure that the voices of local community organizations are raised. I don't know if there are any other questions. Someone wants to, if the reactors would also want to react to give further pointed questions. Not, I think Dr. Ken Artigan go already left, I think, because of a meeting, but we still have Dr. Dabadi and also Dr. Quijano still in the Zoom room. Okay, so there's one question in the chat. Is it okay? I mean, is it safe to take malunggay, turmeric, vitamin C, or food supplements in the form of capsules? Or maybe that's a
Well,
question that you can answer.
yeah, well, it depends on who does it. I mean, who manufactures it. As mentioned by Dr. Dabadi, there are some poor quality manufacturers around, especially the fly-by-night ones. So my suggestion is that because the technology is quite simple, and I've been giving trainings on this for so long, uh, unfortunately, we actually had a good government program of information dissemination as far as medicinal plants is concerned as early as 1980s, because I was part of the I'm still part of the National Integrated Research Program on Medicinal Plants. We are the ones who came up with the Lagundi, Sambong, etc., which was highlighted most efficiently by Dr. Flavier when he was the Secretary of Health. Unfortunately, in the, I would say, in the 1990s, early 1990s, especially when the GATT WTO agreement came in, the policy of privatization was forced into the government, I would say. That's why the initiatives on medicinal plants as a government highly supported government project was turned over to the private sector. So it was taken over by the private companies. So that's one example that I'm saying that corporate power can trump the good initiatives from the grassroots level, because the community education effort in terms of medicinal plants that includes production, gardening, small scale production, even of capsules. In fact, the government already embarked on producing tablets of Lagundi, etc. But that was reversed because of the privatization policy imposed by the IMF World Bank. So that's the situation, that even the good local initiatives are being thwarted by corporate power, and that is true also with the pesticide issue, as I mentioned, and probably Dr. Dabadi also knows the highly hazardous pesticides issue, because Pan Asia Pacific was very active in that issue from the very beginning, and our partner in FAO was Dr. Peter Kenmore in the beginning. I don't know, Dr. Dabadi, if you remember Dr. Peter Kenmore. You know him? Oh,
I
it's a
did
long
not.
time ago.
Yeah,
So
I'm
you
new. I'm
probably
new to FAO.
you probably belong to the younger generation, because that was the time when we had very good relations with FAO, and then recently, probably also that we Pan Asia Pacific protested the partnership of FAO with CropLife and these pesticide companies. We vehemently protested that, but I don't know what's happened to that, and therefore. Even international institutions, actually, my observation is that the international institutions have been doing also a good job, including WHO in the beginning, has deteriorated also into extension of corporate power, sad to say. And I don't know if Dr. Dabadi is aware of some of the big issues pertaining to the influence of private interests in international organizations like WHO or even FAO. But that's another topic to discuss, a very controversial issue. And I'd be willing to talk more intensely with Dr. Dabadi regarding this matter if he would like to. Although I'm already retired for a long time, I've retired working with non-government organizations, although remotely with Pesticide Action Network Asia Pacific at this time. I'm with Sustainable Agriculture Group and Sustainable Energy Group yet at this time, human rights groups, and also personal initiatives with some other independent groups. Like, for example, I work very closely with the group of Edgar and Tina Valenzuela. They're very active in sustainable agriculture advocacy. In fact, I've always admired their organic farm in their own residence, things like that. Even at the individual level, we can do something, and it need not be expensive. For example, malunga is very cheap. It's very easy to grow. Alugbati is very cheap. You don't have to spray pesticides. Saluyot is very cheap. There are so many alternatives that because of the day-to-day advertisement of all these artificial products, people are convinced that they need them and it's very important, and they forget about growing already malunggay in their backyard, or even alugbati, or even saluy, and many other indigenous vegetables that are very nutritious and can be used also as medicine, can be used as a detoxifying agent. But many people are not aware because of the high influence of corporate power in advertising and propaganda in mass media.
Yeah, so that raises also the point of trying to link maybe more. I think our urban poor community representatives, no, are trying to harness more, community gardens, backyard farming. So maybe link really with them, no, in terms of this initiative. So anyway, at this point, I think Doc Ken already has come back again to the Zoom room. Thank you for coming back, Doc Ken. But maybe also I'd like also to ask if you have also your own reflections. The question earlier was on how maybe our institutions that actually undertake food safety monitoring, no, and regulation, have they improved over time in your observation, especially when you were also in government? And what do you think what do you think the challenges, no, besides of the challenges that you listed out in your presentation, what do you think should be done more by these government bodies or even by local government units?
Okay. Thank you, Dean Randy. The purpose of government regulation is to ensure that the consumers are protected, especially when the consumers have no knowledge or facilities to be able to test products themselves. No, so to preventing from making wrong choices. So that's the beauty of regulation. I This is a personal opinion, but I've seen that with so many products and so many issues coming in, the agency is unable to do their job with quality assurance. And citing, for instance, the scarcity of laboratory, but there are ways to go around it. The third-party accreditation of reputable academic laboratory can be put to task in terms of regularly testing raw as well as processed food products. And with that, they should not be afraid to announce and let the public know, because that's one way for building credibility and transparency. I think having safer food, protecting our individuals and family would be the foremost requirement that the government should do. In Thailand, for instance, more than 10 years ago, I learned that the Ministry of Public Health has been ardently pursuing better food regulation, even to the level of street food. Their argument is this: if we are able to improve street food of Thai food products sold on the streets, it will improve tourism and therefore enable economy to grow. Secondly, because of the working class, both parents may be working and have no time to cook, and they would normally buy food from the streets and shops and bring them home. They cannot afford they cannot afford for them to get sick, and therefore it was an important element for them in their food safety policy, to launch this kind of activity. I wish we could do the same, no, to the level of street food. However, sometimes a convenient argument is, well, it's not our job; it's a job of the local government. Yeah, but sure, local government doesn't have the capability of testing, and I think it has to be a joint national local government partnership. And I think industry can play a role in this collaboration. But I think the literacy for food safety must be emphasized so that people can make better choices for themselves. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Doc, and I'm sure that will also apply maybe also to the issue of the the food that's also being sold by our community
Yep.
partners also as well. So maybe more partnerships now with national, local governments, no, with our own community organizations should be added. Okay, so I think, yeah, I hope that it's okay that it's 4:45. No, I think we just have one last question. I hope that this is it's okay. No, then maybe later we'll also hear last words now from our main speakers. So our reactor, Kyla Sakmar, also asked, what are the instances or mechanisms these food safety issues, particularly on the possible contamination, can have differential effects on various socioeconomic levels? So maybe the question, Dr. Romy, no, that's that Kyla is asking is whether are these effects different across different socioeconomic groups? Who are the most affected, in terms of these food safety issues?
Of course, it's always the poor people are most affected, because they don't have much alternatives. The richer people have a lot of alternatives in terms of choosing what kind of food they want to eat, and even in the information, the correct information to get about the safety of the food. It's always, of course, the advantage is always on the people with better financial means. So that's a general truth, in fact, in the social order of things. So that's why the structural causes of all these issues is basically, still the socio-political, still the basic relationship in terms of power, in terms of how this group of people can actually decide for themselves, and how do they influence the policies that are being implemented by the government. And we can go back again to the general rule that President Manuel Quezon has reiterated when he was a president, that those who have less in life should have more in law. But the opposite is actually the truth. Those who have more in life have more in law, and that's what's happening in general, I think. And that I think that should be reversed by people empowerment. But that's difficult, of course. It takes a lot of social revolutionary effort to do that by several means, and it's historically that's of course very difficult, but I think it's possible if we can start really serious awareness raising and start thwarting the control of corporate interests. Basically, I think we actually have trumped the many initiatives from the community level, and I have personal experiences to tell regarding that.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Omino. So at this point, maybe we can hear last few words from our main speakers. And then can I just ask you to give some short remarks, no? In the reverse order that you were called earlier. So maybe we can start with Dr. Tommy again. So maybe any last words on
Actually, my answers to the questions were already my last remarks, because I've been emphasizing the structural causes of ill health,
the
of food
political
safety, and things like that. It's the socio-political, cultural aspect that is very important. And as you can see in my summary acronym, that would be my last remark. Basically, I would emphasize again the summary acronym, awareness raising, but I will emphasize some of this, deepening of understanding, looking into the deeper, so to speak, going to the rabbit hole of why we are in this situation, as I mentioned, and then organizing. That's why the COSMAT experience is quite a good example of good organizing, so that people can be empowered at different levels, because empowerment can go at different levels. So you can start at the lowest level. Hopefully, you can go up to the national level. And of course, you have to have this transformative action as an ultimate objective, not just palliative measures like, for example, itong mga ayuda. These are palliative measures, this pantry. These are good initiatives, but it has to be linked with an overall transformative action as a goal, meaning real transformation of power relations within society, so that the so-called, yung tatsulok sa society natin, what we call this pyramidal social relations, can be reversed, so that the majority of the people who are the farmers and the workers were actually the most influential in terms of policy making and governance. And of course, that the bottom line is empowerment of the people. And there are so many, there's so many interpretation, there's so many levels of empowerment. And again, you start at the lowest grassroots level, and then you can go up to the international level. So I think what I can say now is that we have to do more self searching in terms of analysis of our situation. We need to go back to our Philippine history, the real Philippine history, because much of our history has been distorted by colonial experiences, and we need to really look for genuine sources of truth, because most of our sources of information now are tainted. The mainstream media is already captured basically by corporate power, and practically a lot of institutions in our society right now So we need to do something about it, and hope I appreciate the efforts of your group trying to at least do something to have an alternative truth by having this kind of webinar. So I appreciate your effort. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much also for those who participated. Let's hope that this continue. This kind of discussions can continue.
Dr. Romy, certainly we will continue this conversation even after this webinar. Dr. Ken?
Thank you very much, Dean Randy. I come in with a little bit more philosophical perspective. In the event of regulatory failure, that government are not able to do their job well, I think communities should be empowered and that they should receive good, validated scientific information so that they could make informed choices for themselves. But here's a problem. Well, food safety is important for us. There is another issue that confront our community, and that's hunger. And just this morning, we were talking about the issue of not enough food to the disenfranchised, marginalized people. And this lack of food is going to create malnutrition, stunting, and low IQ that doesn't help them at all. No, later on in the competition struggle for economic development. Therefore, any decision to use food has to consider risk-benefit consideration. I mean, we know food is not perfect, but what's the alternative to dealing with hunger, right? So I guess I stop here for us to think about it and reflect on it. There are no easy answers to this. I know food should be made safe, but to fight the institution that is producing food has to be done in a more strategic way, I think. Thank you.
You, Doc Ken. So while you're speaking, while the presentations were being made earlier, I was also looking at the SDG report now showing that we still need a lot of effort now in improving our record now in SDG. So thank you for emphasizing the importance really of addressing also nutrition this issue. Okay, let's go now to Dr. Lionel.
Yes, thank you. No, maybe to be a little positive, we should not forget that we have never been living so old, so in such a good health, and we have made a lot of progress in the past. Our ancestors, they were dying for a lot of disease, including foodborne disease, and this is today. This we have made a lot of improvement over the years. So we should not forget this, even though we are also. We have probably never been as scared by our food as we are today. We have also never had such a healthy and safe food as we have today. This being said, we are clearly reaching some probably some level which relates to the fact that we have contaminated environments, which contaminating food. We are facing new challenges like climate change, and I think that the solution there is no magical solutions. There is no silver bullet. The diversity of our diets and our capacity to not eat just one food, because you can take the healthiest food in the world. If you eat only this food, you will get sick and you will be dying. So definitely we need to diversify our food. And I think that's part of the message that I would like to leave, is that we must contribute to education. We must contribute to capacity building. We must teach even to the children's the most basic elements. You know, in my country, in France, for example, you can go to the first grade of school. The youngest pupils, they know that they need to eat 5 fruits or vegetable every day if they want to remain healthy. We need to give them also education, basic education on hygiene, etc., and about the environment, also the necessity to preserve the environment, etc. I think that's really, this is a complicated issue, but with education of the people, I think we can face the challenges and continue the progress that we have made in the past. Thank you.
Thank you for the very uplifting message and also the challenges, Doc Lionel. So thank you very much for that. And again, I'd like to extend my thanks now to all again to our speakers, no, Dr. Lionel, Dr. Ken, and Dr. Romy. And I think we are challenged also by some of the remarks made by some of our participants. If they can invite you in their community organizations, and as you said, Doc Lionel, so importance really of education and also knowledge is important in this aspect. So Dr. Quijano, Dr. Romy, maybe they can invite you to COSMA, the urban poor communities as well. Our reactor Bernadette said they'll invite you to talk about food security and safety in their community.
I'll be most honored.
Okay, so thank you. And also, also that invitation, I'm sure, extends also to you, Doc Ken, and also Dr. Lina. And at this point, I'd like to call the convener of the Ateneo Inter-University Working Group on the SDG2, Professor Edgardo Valenzuela, to actually just thank all of our speakers and also our reactors. Prof. Edgar?
Yes, good afternoon. Yeah, as we're almost out of time, I'd just like to quickly thank the three speakers. Dr. Dabadi, it's been a pleasure. We'll follow up to meet with you, hopefully sooner rather than later. And then to Dr. Ken Hartigan Go, our colleague in the School of Government. Maraming salamat. It's been a very good overview of your presentation. And to Dr. Romy Quijano, an old colleague, goes back a long way. I just like to tell him that Dr. Peter Kenmore has retired in California. I don't know where, but he has already retired from FAO. To our three student reactors, Ms. Lapatis, Ms. Cabiladas, and Ms. Sakmar, many thanks for your insights and remarks. I think they were very insightful as they also provide a challenge. And we hope you keep on, part of this work is really being able to develop a new generation of advocates in food security, in food safety, on the challenges of food in general. As we look forward in the next 5, 10, 20 years, how are we going to feed 10 billion people in this planet? To our urban poor reactors, sa dalawang kasama natin galing sa COSMAT, Miss Bernadette Sabalsa at si Ginang Filomena Cinco. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo dito at pagsalita. Napakita nyo na maaring may pag-asa po para sa kinabukasan. Basta nagbubuklod at sama-sama ang mga grupo at mga komunidad, mahalaga po yan. To all of you, since we're running out of time, we'd just like to say that we will send you by email e-certificate certificates of appreciation. And maybe before we end, just like to say that we invite you. This has been a very insightful discussion. We do have a Facebook group. I don't know if Ika can flash the Facebook group in this if we have a slide on that, so that maybe you could join our Facebook group. We opened this in 2021 as we started the UN Food System Summit. It's there on the screen. Please join this, and we can continue the discussions also there. The recording of this webinar will also be uploaded there after it is saved in the Ateneo YouTube channel. So you can find the actual recording for this event. Lastly, we'd also like to mention that we have 3 more webinars lined up before the end of the year. August 22 will be our next one, and we're going to look at the issues related to IT, big data, and it will be anchored by our colleagues from Xavier University. And then in October 22, the week after World Food Day, we're going to put on another webinar on October 22, as I mentioned, to be anchored by our colleagues from Ateneo de Davao University. And the last webinar for the year will be in around the first week of December, which will come back to our host institution here with Ateneo de Manila. And just to assure Dr. Mary Hollensteiner that we'll provide you the contact details of Dr. Quijano so that you can link them up with the COSMAT group. Thank you very much, everybody, and much appreciated for your time and your. We would like to do a group photo if this is possible, as a souvenir shot. For those who are still here, we had about practically the groups who are. We've been a stable group of about 100 people the whole afternoon. Maybe you can open your videos and we can do a group photo for posterity and for the Facebook group and for social media. Can I invite you all to do that? And we will have the group photo now. And we also have an assessment page. We will also share the link so that those of you who might need an e-certificate for participation, we are able to send that to you let's say in a week's time, if you need an e-certificate. So please fill up the link on the evaluation form so we can get your details. So with that, can I ask Ika to do the group photo?
Yeah, thank you, Edgar. And we will announce the link to the evaluation form in a while after the group photo. Okay, Ika, you want to announce if you've taken already our pictures?
Hold on, Paul, hold on.
Maybe you need to put down the slides first so that we all can be seen. Okay, thank you.
Okay po, 1, 2, 3.
So I think that's the first page. Are we going to the second?
I think there are 4 pages or 3 pages. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe ask all to open your videos.
One, 2, 3.
Okay, I think that's the second page. I don't know if you have a third or fourth page.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the third page po, another set po. 1. Can you open your cameras po?
The third page.
Please open your cameras po.
So if not, maybe you can just leave their photos from their Zoom accounts. Anyway.
Are we?
Yeah, I think. Okay.
Maybe we're good. Maybe we can share the link to the evaluation form for those who
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so maybe
might want to have an e-certificate for participating in this webinar. Can you share the evaluation link?
I can share. Okay, so I think Ika's already sharing it. So maybe you can go now just to briefly look at the again. Thank you again to all our speakers and the actors. If you want, you can show briefly our certificates of appreciation. Okay, so you're looking at that's the evaluation form. Okay. Okay, so again, for those who wish to have a certificate of attendance, just fill up the evaluation. Again, on behalf of the SDG2 working group, so again, thank you again to all our speakers, Doc Lionel, Doc Ken, and also to Doc Romy, and also all our reactors, from the from our students and also from our community organization partners. No? So maraming salamat. Again, as Prof. Edgardo had said earlier, we hope that we can see you in our future webinars. So thank you very much and have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Mary.